for everybody to get their computers up and signed on. Jason, can you sign in? Mr. Kolpish?
Can you guys hear me? This is Jordan.
Yep.
I'll do my best to interact, but I'm knocking fruit off, so I'll try, but I won't. Can't guarantee anything. But I'll be listening in for sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jordan.
This is Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Michelle, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
We can hear you too. Thank you.
Fabulous.
Jerry, can you help? 54555-1879.
For anybody that's wondering what's going on the line, we're just trying to get our computers signed in.
Everybody that's at the desk. So this is not going on.
Much too fast for a geezer. And where's Michelle when I need her?
Yeah. It still takes.
I'm here. I just can't help you right now, Larry.
Okay. Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, good to go. First of all, can we all please stand for the invocation by Pastor Tennant?
Well, good morning. Let us pray. Father, you tell us in the word, blessed is a man who follows you. So I pray today that our hearts would be receptive to you, that our hearts would look toward you for counsel and might. And as we do, Father, that you said you would give us wisdom and peace and strength to carry on in these days. So, Father, again, you said blessed, fortunate, happy is the man that follows you. So I pray that every one of our hearts would be in position to say, we need your help. We need your help in these days. We need your help to follow you with all of our strength, with all of our might, with all of our mind. And I pray that over our hearts today. I pray the peace of God and the welfare and the goodness of God over our meetings here today, over people's conversations, just that our lives would acknowledge you even more, that our great need to follow you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. You remain standing. Let's do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get your present.
Okay, now we roll call.
We need a couple people to hit present on their machines, please. Paula,
Alan?
Ellen,
Okay, roll call's taken. Note that Hallstrand is excused absent. Same with Warco, excused absent. And there are 3 supervisors online. Okay, communications and announcements. I have none. Do any other board members have any communications or announcements?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a communication, but it pertains to the library. So should I hold that for when we're discussing that?
Let's do that, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on. Public comments. Oh, Ms. Hoda, could you grab the sheet there and you can just remain there and just call out who's ever first on the list.
keep her informed.
All right, Deb Hyde, Park Falls Library.
Good morning. I'm Deb Hyde. I'm the director of the Park Falls Public Library. We're here tonight to talk, or today, excuse me, to talk about the reimbursements. And I just want to give you a little bit of background. The current Price County Library Plan was prepared by the Price County Library Committee during the last months of 2023. And it was during that time that the discussion of reimbursements began. Culling information from our library system, we found out that what other libraries were asking. We debated the possibility of requesting more, and if more, how much. We discussed the possibility of working out a scale where the reimbursement might grow steadily over the years. And as you know, we discussed the possibility of asking for 100% reimbursement. Our decision to go with 100% was based on 3 different factors. First, the 100% seemed the quickest and most efficient way of caring for our patrons by meeting the rising costs of books, DVDs, and supplies. Our people are always our priority, and meeting their needs is always our mission. Secondly, we wanted to bring our reimbursement numbers from 70% up to date and closer to other libraries in our library system, so it would put us on par with them. At the time of our discussions, we were under the impression that the 70% reimbursement numbers had not changed in the last 20 years. And the third, we wanted to recognize the importance of being cognizant of the county's budget and of the taxpayer dollars. Our understanding at that time was that the amounts would not change the budget, but would add small amounts to the mill rate that would not greatly affect the taxes. Becky, Amy, and I have seen the needs of our communities change since the years of COVID and continue to work hard to adjust our mission to those changes. Our libraries have grown from information centers to community centers. Our attendance numbers have grown with additional resources, circulations, and programs. We have been thankful for and careful with our city funding and our county funding, and will continue to strive to use those resources to the best of our abilities to ensure that our libraries remain valued by and relevant to our communities. At the executive committee last week, a motion was made to offer 80% reimbursement to the Price County libraries. Although the motion failed, we were pleased with the idea. We welcome a compromise. Any additional funding would help so much. We are here today to show you our commitment to our libraries, to our communities, and to our county. We are here to answer your questions, to listen to your discussion, and honestly to hope for an outcome that will benefit us all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What do we have next?
Shirley Smith, Phillips.
Topic library. Almost missed my cue.
Good morning. I'm Shirley Smith. I'm a resident of the city of Phillips. One of the items on today's agenda is the level of support the county will give the libraries in Price County. Based on circulation, that level is set at 70%, which I am believed to be a required minimum. Many other counties are more generous than that. Dunn and Eau Claire counties fund at 100%. Polk County funds at 95%. Chippewa County funds at 90%. Pierce County funds at 85%. Barron County funds at 77%, with a plan in place to raise it to 80% over a period of years. I believe they are not just being generous or are more supportive of libraries than Price County. I believe it is because the definition of circulation has not caught up with modern times. When a patron uses their library card to get an ebook or an audio book, their library has paid into the IFLS system to make that available to them. Unfortunately, checking out digital materials does not count as part of a library's circulation according to the current definition. Counting digital checkouts would add 25% to the circulation of the library I use. Please increase the level of funding for the libraries in Price County.
Thank you.
Joe Fox, Town of Worcester. Topic is budget.
So they're asking you to raise taxes on every single resident in our county. Every single resident, a pass-through tax during this economy and during these times. That's what they are asking you to do. They talk about in an executive meeting that this doesn't affect the other departments, so don't worry about it. This affects every single person who owns property in this county. This affects every single person that rents in this county because their rates will rise. I strongly object to, honestly, I couldn't even imagine that 7, 11, or 13 of you would vote to raise the taxes of our community at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other ones? Okay. We'll end public comment unless there's anybody online.
*6 if you're online and would like to make a public comment.
Okay, nobody online. We'll move on to presentations. First one's employee recognitions from Laura Palskill.
Good morning. So we have 4 employee milestone recognitions to recognize today. In September, employees celebrating 1 year with the county are Dakota Haberman, who is a deputy sheriff, Alexis Timmers, our judicial assistant, and Jesse Meyer, who is a corrections officer, civilian dispatcher in the sheriff's department. And then celebrating 10 years with us this month is Bill Johnson, who is a highway operator. So let's give them all a round of applause and thank them for their service. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, employees.
I know, I can't get it to do what I want it to do.
Okay, presentation number 2, 2023 audited financial report from Baker Tilly LLP. We've got Sheann Hediger. Hopefully I pronounced her last name right.
We practiced before the meeting.
You have the, in your packet, you should have this too, right?
No.
That's not it? Okay, just this one sheet.
So the sheet you should have in your packet, and we'll talk more about the full packet later.
All right. Well, thank you for having me here this morning. I am Sheann Hediger. I'm partner with Baker Tilly out of the Eau Claire office. I oversee the audit of Price County, and we are very much nearing the end of completion of the 2023 audit. So as Nick mentioned, you do have a handout there within your packets. Typically at this time, I bring you final issued reports. Unfortunately, we are still working through a few final matters on the federal and state awards portion of the audit. So financial numbers, financial statements are in complete format. We're just waiting to issue it all together. So by the end of this month, we will have the 3 reports to you, and that will include the financial statements, the report on federal and state awards, and the reporting and insights letter. So just cover those briefly here. The opinion, the independent auditor's report, is within the financial statements. That's the first 3 or so pages. That is actually us as the auditors portion of it. We do intend to issue an unmodified opinion this year. So again, a clean opinion, the highest level you can receive. And what that indicates is that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material aspects in accordance with US GAAP. There'll be a section on management's responsibility. So management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of those financial statements. Also responsible for designing and implementing internal controls over the financial reporting, and then evaluating whether there are any conditions or events that raise substantial doubt about the ability to continue in operations. There's then the auditor's responsibility that's laid out. Our objective is to obtain a reasonable assurance that the financials are free from material misstatement. I want to emphasize that a reasonable assurance is not absolute. We are not looking at every transaction. We do evaluate those internal controls that I was mentioning, do a risk analysis on our own, and then design our procedures and determine what to look at throughout the audit process. Misstatements would be considered material if they raise a substantial likelihood that they would influence the judgment of the users. So we're not talking, $500,000 errors or differences within numbers. It would be a larger magnitude that would really make an impact to the users. In performing our audit, we do exercise professional judgment and maintain our professional skepticism, identify the risk of material misstatements. We obtain an understanding of the internal controls, evaluating accounting policies and estimates, and then finally, concluding whether there were any of those events or conditions that raise substantial doubt as to the ability to continue. Okay, now I will dive into those financial highlights. So that is the 2-page that you have there in your packets. So starting at the top of that, we've got the general fund balance. This really is one of the most important metrics within your financial statements. Looking at what's in the general fund balance helps to assess that there's adequate cash flows to offset the timing of receipts, and then allows for flexibility in responding to any budgetary needs or unexpected expenses that may come up. So your fund balance can be broken down into these 5 categories. They're listed in order of liquidity and restriction. So the non-spendable fund balance is that which is in a non-spendable form. The 1.4 million there is made up largely of delinquent taxes and prepaid expenses and inventories. The restricted balance is meant to be kept separate from other funds, usually by outside restrictions, so external groups, creditors, grantors, or laws and regulations. The 118,000 is various outside restrictions. When you do have your financials or the draft financials, if you have, page 34 of that in the footnotes does detail what those various restrictions are for. The committed fund balance is that which you as the board have set aside by resolution for specific future purposes. And that balance is for future capital projects. And then the assigned is also what you've internally designated, but not usually as restrictive by the county board. And that is for future general fund expenditures and veterans expenditures. And then the remaining, the unassigned, is the residual positive fund balance, so that which can be used kind of undesignated and for future operations. So overall, the total fund balance is just under 7 million for the year. And that is a $3.2 million increase over the prior year, which I'll get into the details of that too. All right, still looking at that general fund balance, one measure of adequacy is to look at what is in that kind of unrestricted or available to use in comparison to the general fund expenditures for the year. So we consider the assigned and unassigned fund balance as the available to be used. So that balance is about 4.3 million at the end of 2023 in comparison to general fund expenditures of just 11.9 million. So that fund balance consists of about 36% of your expenditures for the year. You see we have the 5-year trend here on that schedule. What that equates to is you have about 4 months of reserves in your fund balance to continue operations if you were to receive no revenues in 2024. The GFOA recommends a minimum 2 months in that balance, and that would be a minimum for sure. So the county has jumped nicely above that in 2023. And the reason for the spike in last year, there was about $2.7 million of debt proceeds that were sitting in the debt service fund, where now in 2023, those transferred over to the general fund and reimbursed some capital projects expenditures that had happened in 22. So just a timing difference there between the 2 years. When we look at these numbers, they are point in time, December 31. So depending on when activity happens, but based on this for 2023, the fund balance does appear to be adequate. And I think Nick would agree that we would expect that balance to probably stay up in that range going forward.
Yeah, so we made an adjustment, like you said, we had a debt fund balance that wasn't being transferred as we finished projects. So we were sitting on our funds. We were using general fund money to pay for the projects and not paying ourselves back with the debt proceeds. There's some other little things that would equate to this and why it balances out is we had a good year in investments. So our interest rate is much higher than it had been in the past. We weren't budgeting for it. We're now budgeting for it in the future because we were at 0.04% and now we're averaging that 4.5%. So that's a big change. Same with forestry products or stumpage. We budget 1.2 million and we had 1.6 million in sales. Well, that's $400,000 that goes into the unrestricted. But like this year, we're already 500,000 behind. So that'll eat itself up real quick. So that's how we keep it balanced. But if we would have been transferring those debt service projects as completed, if you look back at 2019, we're at 17%, you'd have a pretty even, steady climb to that 36. It wouldn't have been the spike because we did a $400,000 project and we just kept it in cash rather than the debt service. So they were offsetting each other, but not as unrestricted fund balance. That makes sense to anybody besides the auditor. Gary knows.
Okay. The next section then, Nick just stole half of my thunder, but that's okay. Looking at budget to actual results, so your revenues and expenditures for the year that fed into that fund balance. So you did have a balanced budget for 2023, with a planned net change of 0. But you could see here the actual fund balance did increase that 3.2 million. The biggest variances on the revenues and other financing sources side, again, this $2.8 million transfer that happened was not budgeted for, but did happen. As Nick said, interest rates were really great for 2023. So this was, we're seeing this across the board everywhere, that interest income is quite a bit higher than what anyone budgeted for. And then the stumpage revenues as well, being over budget. On the expenditure side, you're really not too big of a variance from your budget considering the size of the dollars. There were wage increases that I'm sure you're all well familiar with that happened, between 22 and 23. So just seeing all of that catch up close to a full year's worth. Looking at cash and investments. So this is for the full county. Again, this is point in time, so things do fluctuate based on timing of payments and receipt of taxes and grants and such. The custodial funds listed there, those are pass-through monies, so that is not dollars that the county can direct where it goes to. It's typically, register of deeds type monies that get passed through the state, or any tax monies that are being passed through. So that fluctuates again based on what timing of receipts and payments. A couple of the other funds of the county then, we've talked general fund quite a bit, but do want to highlight the special revenue funds, human services, and the special grants funds. Pretty typical activities in there this year. So you see the trends of those fund balances. And then finally, debt service. Again, the timing of that transfer. So in 2022, that $2.7 million of debt proceeds were within that fund. And then in 23, that was transferred over, and I think we're back to where that balance really should be reflected. All right, then a quick look at the highway fund. In 2023, the working capital, so your current assets in comparison to current liabilities, current assets were about 280,000 less than current liabilities. The big change there is that short-term debt is now on as a current liability, and timing of tax levies and such, and those payments that come in will increase your cash again to make that payment. The loss before transfers was about 3.3 million for the year. Just looking at overall highway activities, local transportation aids were up about 1.2 million over 2022. However, construction, equipment, maintenance costs, all of that was up about 2.2 million. So causing, about that $1 million increase to the deficit. Overall, though, net position only went down 875,000 due to the transfer then from debt service of debt proceeds to highway to fund some of those construction projects. As for the makeup of the net position, probably notably there is the restricted for net positions in 2023 is at 0. That number is based on the Wisconsin retirement system, actuarial assets or liabilities based on the retirement plan. So in 22 and 21, that actually was an asset, meaning the state plan was overfunded based on these assumptions and calculations that the state does. And in 23, it bounced back to a liability. So there's no restricted net position for it. I will say it still floats right around that fully funded amount. The retirement system in Wisconsin is doing well. Okay, last numbers section then. Just one more look at the long-term debt of the county. So the outstanding general obligation debt at the end of 2023 was about 2.9 million. The debt capacity, which is 5% of your equalized value of the taxable property, did increase to about 106 million for the year. So what that shows, you have a nice rising tax base, creating more debt capacity if needed, but the county is well below capacity at 2.75%. So that's a good position to be in. You don't want to be near that 100% by any means. And then just one measure of looking at your debt service, your annual debt service expenses, so your principal and interest, compared to other non-capital expenditures, so just kind of your general operations. Your debt service expenditures make up about 3.5% of your total expenditures. If you were to be going for rated bonds, one of the measures that the bond agencies look at is this percentage of your debt service to total expense. And their recommended maximum is 20%. So again, you can see over the 5 years here, Price County has remained well below that maximum threshold. So that is the end of my numbers. I do want to just touch on, so the report on federal and state awards, this is the one that's still in progress. At the end of 2023, the county had expended about $2.6 million in federal awards. With this, we have a prescribed methodology of deciding what the major programs will be for the year that we need to test. So for 2023, we are testing the medical assistance program and the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, or your ARPA funds that are being spent. And then on the state award side, there was about 3.1 million spent. And the major programs being tested are listed there: the basic county allocation, snowmobile trail aids, county staff and support, land and water resource management, and children's long-term support. From that list, you can see we are working with a lot of different departments within the county. We have a lot of people that we are bothering, a lot of requests. So I do appreciate everybody's assistance with getting through this process. And we, as I mentioned, still working on a few more things, but we're getting really close. There are a couple of different opinions within the report on federal and state awards. One being the report on internal control over financial reporting. So this is really based on the reporting of your financial statements and how that translates into this federal and state awards report. This will look very similar to prior years. We do have a material weakness in internal control over financial reporting. And that is because we, as your auditors, prepare the financial statements. That's consistent with probably 85 to 90% of my governmental client base. So very common to see. And then we also have a significant deficiency in the internal control environment, which really relates to segregation of duties over payroll transactions. We are able to reduce that to a significant deficiency rather than reporting a material weakness due to various, additional or complementary controls that have been put in place, additional reviews. A lot of that largely stems from just either system access prevents you from having everything completely separate, or backup functions. If somebody's gone, somebody else has to do it. And therefore they have access to things. These do not mean that we found anything inappropriate. It's just a matter of us reporting what we found in our assessment of the control structure.
Shan,
Yes.
So for this one, we do have, this has been on our list forever. We have been working on it each year. We change the way we access who can access what. We've put in place where certain reports are printed and we put initials on it that someone that didn't have access to it reviews it. We spot check things. The biggest problem with these is even when we implement them, it's always too late for a year. So like we find out about this report, we work with Baker Tilly and say, what changes can we make? We make those changes in June, July, August, but then when they start their 20, like say for 2024, we start the audit, we had 6 months of non-compliance with these new things and 6 months with. So it would actually take a year and a half before we could get rid of a finding like this. From my understanding, this is just like the first one you said, most counties of our size or any smaller size, you can't afford to have segregation of duties to the level of no finding.
Correct.
And that's where the levels of finding make a difference.
Yes. Yep. And then we did not find any instances of non-compliance over federal or over financial reporting. Oh,
Kopish.
sorry.
Just following up, Nick, what did you say? Are we doing things that are going to mitigate this, or are we going to see the same thing next year?
We'll see the same thing for the 2024. In 2025, our goal is to reduce it. So one of the things I have to spot check, Carrie prints off a report. I have to pick 4 individuals off of that. I have to go find their time card and sign off, or whatever the activity is, saying I checked randomly that we did this payroll right. We've taken permission away from a lot of individuals. We've now used Laura's position as the person who puts the person in the system, where Jennifer now can only or change the elections that they take. So we've segregated the duties so that Jennifer isn't the only one changing something, or Carrie or Robin or myself. Like, I no longer have access to any of it, where in the past I had access so that if Carrie was gone, I could add a deduction or whatever it might be for payroll. So with some of the new things, that's our goal, is to reduce it. I don't think we'll ever be able to eliminate it just because of our sheer size. It's hard to say everything is segregated, because everything will never be segregated. We have a log system, so if you go into the system and I change, I couldn't do this, but if someone changes a wage, it does a timestamp and says Jennifer was in the system, this person's deduction or wage was changed. If Robin goes in there, it does a timestamp that Robin did it. So we have implemented many things. Again, that's why we got it reduced from whatever significant to
From material to significant.
Or material to significant, which sounds, oh my gosh, significant. In the auditor's world, it's less than material.
Yeah, it's a less severity.
Thank you.
Okay. The next part of then the report on federal and state awards is the report on compliance over each of those major grant programs that I mentioned. With this, I do have a note on the bottom. The results are in draft form and subject to change. And actually, I got a note yesterday from one of my teammates that we may have found an exception. So potentially we do have a finding, but we'll evaluate that further and work with staff to make sure that that's appropriately remedied if there is any issue. And then the final piece of the federal and state awards is then an upload to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse of that report. So we'll have all that wrapped up by the end of this month, as the federal deadline is 9/30. Yes.
Ms. Hodak.
Okay, so I just have a question. This is very nice. Thank you. Always appreciate your work. This is just a terminology question.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick spoke to an auditor's world in terminology, and from a former teacher's world of terminology, I would have a ranking of excellent, good, adequate, poor. You use the term adequate for our fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where it stands in that, like excellent, good, adequate, poor?
No, I would say adequate or inadequate.
Okay, so you're putting those two. It's not compared to. So you're saying it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Tomato, tomato.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you. I just kind of just raises some hackles there.
Pass fail grade.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Okay.
I listened to the executive meeting and the municipalities numbers were coming back incorrect. Is that where the auditor company takes over and finds out why, or what is the reason for that?
So what Mr. Hastings is, I'm guessing, is talking about is we haven't had any issues on our end, because we do the checks. We just say, here's what is owed, here's what you're going to receive. So there's been some receding issues with some of the municipalities when it comes to tax collection. In the end, we just look at what was supposed to be collected, what is collected. We make individuals whole. It's the municipality's responsibility to understand their own books and what they are collecting and aren't collecting. Our auditors audit us. They're not going out to the municipalities. Each municipality should have their own audit firm. I don't know the requirements on what levels of certain things, but it would be and I'll pick on Town of Elk again, and they're not part of this, but Town of Elk would have to say, we do our annual audit, and it would be above and beyond the normal audit process that they would say, we want a forensic audit on our receipting process. So it'd be way above and beyond the normal cost. Like if we asked Baker Tilly today to not just do our general audit, and we said, oh, I have a problem with a department, could you please do a forensic audit or dig into the receipting of register of deeds or zoning, whatever it would be, there would be a significant charge because that would be hours of work and above and beyond. So going back to your municipal question, we as a county don't have anything to do with the municipality. We look at the numbers that the tax bills said, as in the whole, the certificates, all that, and go, our settlement should be $1 million. Here's your $1 million. Done. That's up to the municipality to know their own books.
But doesn't that directly affect us when the money's not there to be turned in, or?
No, because we ask for our portion of the money, and if it's there, it's there. It's not, that's a municipal bookkeeping issue. So if you put in the system that from Nick, you collected 100% of the taxes and only collected 50% of the taxes, we as the county are going to keep the 100% because you said that was what was collected. It's not delinquent. And the municipality would be out the county's portion of that tax, not the county. We as a county would not be out the money there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a municipal issue, not a county issue, how the settlements work.
Go ahead.
Okay, then the final report that we will be issuing is the reporting and insights letter. So this is communication to you as the board and to management, really summarizing the audit process and the audit findings throughout. Within there, the last couple pages of that report is the two-way communications regarding the 2024 audit. So looking ahead to next year, giving the nature, scope, and timing of that audit. There's also some information in there, various questions to you as the board members, if you would ever have any concerns or areas that you felt warranted more attention from the audit. You can reach out to us at any time throughout the year. We'll take notes and work that into our procedures. We do talk to a board member annually as well through our audit, but all are welcome to comment. And then we go over the 2023 audit approach and results. Just a few highlights from there. I did mention we look at significant estimates in the financial statements. So for the county, we've identified the net pension liability and related deferrals and depreciation as being the most significant estimates. If we had any difficulties, disagreements, consultations outside of our audit team or with management, we would report those to you. Always very happy to report we had no difficulties, no disagreements with management, no consultations outside of our audit team. So everybody is very cooperative and everything looked, on the up and up. Corrected misstatements do get included within the letter as well. And then we have a section for upcoming GASB's, upcoming accounting standards that could impact the county. We thankfully have a couple of quiet years here coming up, things that shouldn't cause too much work on your finance team or on us as the auditors. So GASB's 100 and 101 are effective for 2024, but we're not expecting significant changes with those. So I do just want to wrap up again by saying thank you to the county staff, Carrie, Nick, Human Services, Land Management, everybody. Said we ask a lot of questions. We spend time here on site. We're back in our offices, emailing and phone calls and such. So it is a heavy lift on your staff to get ready for an audit, to go through the audit. So we do appreciate the cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shan. Are there any other questions, concerns anybody has for Shan? Okay, not.
All right.
Thank you again.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on, minutes from August 13th and August 20th, 2024 meetings. Entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Erickson, second by Barkstrom. Any discussion? Hearing none, go ahead and vote.
Joe? Motion on approving the minutes?
Yes, approve.
Michelle?
Approve.
Jordan, are you there? I will mark Jordan as abstaining.
Yes, approved. Sorry, can you hear me?
Okay, we'll change that then. Thank you.
Sorry. Yep.
Okay, minutes approved. 11 yes, 0 no, 2 absent. Resolutions. Number 1, 2023 transfer to capital improvement fund from executive. Nick, you want to talk about that?
Oh, this is trying to get that screen back.
Okay, on your screen, we're looking for a motion to approve resolution number 1. Motion by Barkstrom, second by Kopish. Further discussion? Okay, Nick, you want to?
Okay. This resolution is the resolution we do each year after the audit. So we've received the audit. We know our final numbers. It is to transfer funds to the capital improvement fund, which you should have a sheet, or you will in your budget, about where our capital improvement fund sits. There's 2 ways to go about it based on our county policies and procedures. And the first way is 20%, or one way is 20% of our sales tax, or the second way would be 50% of our net proceeds of our general fund account. So not including highway, health and human services, vet service, anything like that. This year it happened to be 50% of our net proceeds. Usually comes along because of like our interest, and we had a really good stumpage year, things like that. So the number actually is used as 50% of our proceeds of our general fund to to fund our capital improvements.
Any questions for Nick or further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Joe will vote on resolution number 1.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Tally is in, vote is passed 11-0.
Okay, moving along. Look for a motion to approve 2023 approved transfer to offset budget overages. Motion by Kopish, second by Polachek. Nick, you want to describe this one too, please?
Sure. So again, we do this after our annual audit. We have a county policy that says any expense that exceeds 10% or is greater than 10% or 25% of a department, it needs to be reviewed and okayed. So this would come out of the general funds. And so this year we had quite a few. There's a list of what the reasoning behind those overages were. So we did a capital improvement fund transfer that was $304,000. So that's why it was unbudgeted, but it's discussed at a committee meeting. A lot of health insurance where individuals took a family that we didn't have on the list to take a family. We had, land information. We did our grants. We usually adjust for some of that, but this year we didn't have any revenues to adjust for. So it's It was a revenue from like 2 years ago. Health insurance, the sheriff's department. We talked quite a bit about this. The sheriffs and corrections. We've adjusted how we do our sick and vacation usage. And then we also had a lot of training. So we're finally at full staff, but while you're at full staff, when you have 4 or 5 out of your 10 people are new, you're still doubling up for several months while they're training. So we should see that one based on our next year's budget and some of our, we shouldn't be doubling up as much going into next year. We should see that even out a little bit. Historically, we've always tended to be, Sheriff's Department always tends to have big issues throughout the year.
Isn't our jail population being housed out of the counties?
Yep, so
That
you'll
has a
see that
significant number on this,
this would be last year. So this year we talked about there has been a significant number of inmates that we've had to house out of county. We're currently at about 40 total inmates and we can only house about 26. So we've been up and down. I think our average has been 10 individuals outside of the county. For the last like 4 years, we've had almost 0. So that will be probably over budget because we traditionally budgeted about 20,000.
so that doesn't show up in this report.
Nope, that'll be next year's.
Sure. Mr. Kopish.
Yeah, question. The general revenue, that transfer, apparently, we don't budget for that.
No.
So that's going to be an issue based upon how it calculates.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The sheriff's office, like you said, and the corrections, that's every year we seem to be quite a bit over budget.
Yep.
Are we adjusting the budget to,
Each year, yeah. So what we've done,
so we don't have these
budget,
big?
yeah.
Yeah.
So going into this year, we adjusted about half of the underage, and then hope we did better with the timing. This going into next year, we did budget more towards these issues. I don't think we'll hit 100% of them, but we've been slowly working towards that number. Yes.
Be
We
nice
also
to
don't
have
want to
them come
give,
in within budget once in a while.
well, and we don't want to give, when we budget, we as a county control the purse strings of
Yep.
an elected individual. So you want to be cautious as a board to not go, oh, you hit this number last year, let's give them that number because, and we have a good sheriff, I'm not accusing anything, but it makes it easy to go, oh, cool, I can hit that number and I need X, Y, or Z. So by cautiously budgeting, you're controlling it a little bit more when it comes to your responsibility toward the sheriff's department.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead
Mr.
and vote.
Chairman, it's,
I'm sorry, Mr. Hastings.
nobody objected to $1 million overage. Is that normal, I guess? What is an average of the last 5 years of an overage? That just seems excessive to me.
Well, one thing we didn't do in this one, and we did change the policy, so it's not $1 million overage. So if you look at the end of the year, we had almost $1 million more revenues. And so most of this stuff was offset by our revenue, but our policy in the past said we do not get this offset based on the budget. So if we budgeted or if we didn't budget and we got a grant for $500,000 and we spent the grant, we didn't have the revenue because it wasn't budgeted for, but it came in. So that department was a positive $500,000 in revenue and an overage of $500,000 in expenses. And so it looks like we overspent by $500,000, but you didn't. You actually spent exactly what the board said you'd spend. We did change that policy recently. I don't know exactly, I'd have to go back and look when, that it says we can take into account that situation. So if we got a dam grant for $500,000 and then we spent $500,000, that would not come to the full board as an over expenditure. So this year we did all of them like we did historically. Going forward, we can adjust that so you wouldn't see these same, even like some of the circuit court, it's over in health insurance, but they received an extra $10,000 in revenues. So really their overage is only 22,000, not 32. And then also with sale or health insurance, we pay ourselves. So it wasn't expense outside the county. We're putting it into it, we're designated into a fund. So we're taking some of our general fund money and putting it in a designated health insurance fund. So we're paying ourselves. So we didn't overspend for the year. We gave to ourselves.
Mr. Kopish.
Yeah, follow up on that. It's good to see this.
Mhm.
So I would hate that you don't mitigate it too much.
And if anything, we
Like the
could maybe put,
500,000 example you said,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But maybe just because the department gets more revenue, we shouldn't adjust the health. We should still see that we.
correct,
have
it
an
says
issue.
correlating.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think the policy
It
says
should be-
correlating. So like,
Yeah.
again, project-based. Health and Human Services is really good at this, but this only affects the general fund where it's, the state gave them an extra $12,000. We didn't budget for that, but we said in the meeting, yep, we're accepting the 12 to do a extra programming. So like, if we had to show that, that one would be an offset. We see that more than you think throughout, especially small stuff. I can't think of a example in the general fund. It's like vet service gets an extra $8,000 from the state to do transportation. Well, we only budgeted $4,000 for transportation. He'll spend $12,000, but he got $8,000 extra. This is not a negative. This is all stuff that we knew was happening. This is not a department head going, cool, I've overspent. This is, like I said, health insurance, somebody changes, but we pay ourselves. So it's not a loss of cash.
Any further discussion or questions for Nick? Hearing none, go ahead and vote.
Joe, resolution to approve budget overages.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 11-0.
Okay, next resolution, number 3, approve highway department project to be financed with money transferred from the capital improvement fund. Motion by Erickson, second by Polachek. Discussion. Any questions? Everybody okay? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote.
Joe, resolution to approve highway project finance with money from transferred from capital improvement fund.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And Jordan?
Yes.
Thank you. Carries 11-0.
Okay, next item. Resolution number 4, implement county 2025 capital projects to be financed with short-term debt. Executive. Motion by Polachek. Second by Barkstrom. Discussion.
Each year we do this resolution to replace the loans that we did the prior year. So these mimic or match the loans that were satisfied. So we satisfied a $350,000 loan for a truck. We satisfied a $180,000 loan. So now we're saying in order to stay on task, we're reborrowing that same exact amount via a little bit of interest to do the same thing we did the prior year. So it's almost operational, but it's still a short-term borrowing is how we put it in the levy.
Further discussion or questions for Nick?
What kind of interest rates are we paying on the new borrowing versus the old borrowing and paying it off?
Carrie's giving me hand signals in the back of the room. It looks like they're coming in about 4.75. But again, we do short term, so it's 1 month. We were at about
I just
2.5.
wasn't sure on that.
Yeah, we were about 2.5. Now we're about 4.5. We had about 2.25 points.
Okay, thank you.
225 points to be exact.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, go ahead and vote.
Joe, resolution to approve 2025 capital improvement projects or capital projects finance with short-term debt.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Carries 11-0. Resolution 29-24.
Just one comment on the interest rate. Right now, interest rates are almost null and void because we'll take in the money in December and we're receiving about 5% on our money and we're paying 4.75. So we're break even besides your fee. And so right now we're still in a good position. Now, if interest rates go down, that's where you're going to start to see no more arbitrage is the financial term of those loans.
Okay, we'll move on. Resolution number 5, 2025 Bryce County Highway Department Equipment Improvement Program to be financed with short-term debt. Came from executive actually this morning, and it originated in highway from last week. And Nick or Roger?
Yeah, so I'll start the conversation. This has been a long time discussion coming. We've had to start borrowing for trucks. They've gone from 185 to 300 some thousand. Our equipment fund averages just under the $400,000, so we can pay for about one truck there and small equipment. So we know to maintain our construction and our plowing mandates is we need about 2 trucks a year. So now we're covering with borrowing 1 truck, equipment fund, general equipment fund, cash, whatever you want to look at, 1 truck plus our small equipment. Where we're falling behind at highway in our discussion is the yellow construction equipment or large construction equipment. It's not always yellow. What the discussion happened to be is we know we have graders that are from I think 2000 and 2005-ish. And so they've hit their lifespan. And in order to start working on replacing pieces of equipment such as the grader, it was recommended that we start an additional equipment fund that would slowly build up over the next 5 years to be able to get this type of equipment and or other equipment based on an updated plan. So this year, what they're requesting is just under $500,000, we're saying $500,000, not to exceed $500,000, depending on whatever the grader cost is, which we assume about $460 minus a trade-in, which is $30. So somewhere in the mid 400s is what the grader cost would be. We're recommending a 5-year payback on this program. So this year's fiscal impact to the budget would be about $123,750, which is about a nickel on the mill rate, which is not included currently, but it would be about a nickel. And then next year we'll look at, we've had Roger put together an equipment plan for construction. We would say 500,000, whatever the piece of equipment might be. And then we borrow again for 5 more years. So then this year for 2025, the payment would be 125. The following year, it would be about 225. So we would slowly ramp up like we've done with our other borrowing projects or other borrowing ways of ramping up. And then this would get us into what we're calling that yellow or construction equipment plan to start replacing some of those pieces of equipment that are 20 to 25 years old and need to be looked at.
Just a comment from me. We don't have to decide today if you want to see this in a hard copy. Right now, you've heard it's going to probably cost a nickel, $1,000.
About a nickel, yeah.
But if it's in our discussion regarding the budget going forward this morning, the paperwork you're going to see, the hard copy doesn't include this. So we could table this till our next meeting.
If you want to see the
if you want to
5-year
see the
plan.
hard copy.
How is this going to affect our debt limit?
Well, like
Right now we're at 2.75.
Yep, it'd be 125,000 more in payments. So it would be like 0.01%.
So
on that.
Insignificant amount.
Yeah,
Mr. Kopish.
So these other resolutions are in the budget that we're going to see, and this
this
one
would
is-
be an additional
This is in
borrowing.
addition to.
This would be new borrowing. This would go above and beyond our current debt limit or debt level. Limit's the wrong word.
Well, will make a difference if we do it today or next month.
Correct.
As far as when it gets done.
Well, the numbers are going to change, I guess.
Yeah, the
I
numbers
guess-
aren't going
Do
to
you want to
change.
see them on a hard copy or just take his word for it?
That's a lot of trust.
Or Carrie.
Carrie's
Carrie's word for it.
No, yeah. It's more of if you wanted to see, like Roger and I talked about what the equipment would look like. We just didn't have it in front of you. So like we know next year it would be a grader. That would be the goal on this up to $500,000. The next year would be one or two pieces of equipment. And then we talked about another grader. I think it was like 3 years down the line because ours right now are about 5 years apart and they're both falling apart. But we don't want to buy one back to back because then we'll have the same problem in 20 years.
We probably should approve it before we put it in the budget, so.
Well, the only reason I say that, and Brian and I talked about this, postponing or tabling, is it will affect the budget
Right.
debt levy. So we can wait until we discuss the full budget and what that effect is, or you can say, we understand this is very important to the citizens and to the board or the county, and we're willing to go up a nickel.
Right.
This guarantees a nickel increase,
Yeah.
whether you offset it with other things or not.
Okay, we got a motion by Polachek and a second by Erickson on this resolution. So we're discussing it now. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead and vote then, hearing none.
Joe, the resolution to finance highway equipment with short-term and debt.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
Thank you. Carries 11-0 for resolution 30-24.
Okay, very good. Next resolution, number 6, support of Nevada's application for broadband equity access and deployment, otherwise known as BEAD program grant. This came from executive also this morning. Apologize for the last minute,
Yeah,
but
it was
we
no
didn't
problem.
find out about it, as Nick explained earlier, till maybe that's at the former meeting, but we just found out about it after our last executive meeting.
So I can go through it. We talked about this at executive.
That's motion by Kopish, second by Polachek. Okay, now we can discuss it.
Okay. So this morning, there was a request by Norvado to support them in their BEAD program. So we've been talking about BEAD for a while. We didn't know when the first applications were going to be due, but it happens to be, they open it up and it's really quick. It's October. So we didn't want to wait till the October board meeting in order to show our support to a telco. Part of the BEAD program grant application is if you can get your local municipality, so the county, to support you, the county has up to 7 points towards the grant program. If we choose one telco, it goes all 7 to that telco. If we choose 2 telcos, they split it 3.5, you split it farther out. Currently, we don't get to choose how we split it. We just say we're supporting or not supporting. So if we only support one by the end of October, it's 7 to this process. Again, it came quickly because the due date is in October. Our next meeting is mid-October. They wanted to get their grant application in. I have a picture somewhere here.
Quick comment, in our original packet, there were 2 options for this resolution. And one just called for support. This option 2 called for support plus a dollar amount. At the executive meeting this morning, it was decided to forward the option 2 resolution, which includes a dollar amount of $100,000, which you've received a copy of, I believe.
And we'll talk about that resolution or the access to that funding or what the funding would be. If you look up at the screens, this is the map I received, that this is what the 34 point whatever $1 million project would go towards the BEAD project. It outlines Park Falls area. So it goes out through Fifield, out west of Butternut Lake, down 70, so Fifield area. It does not include this center, so it's like a donut up there. It does not include Park Falls, as Park Falls is not considered a underserved area for the project. The other portion of the project, so they're lumping them together, would be the southwest corner of Price County. You can see up here, I'm going around it with my mouse here. But it would be that southwest corner from pretty much a little bit, it looks like Highway 13 west. And then south of the 339 project that we just did. So that's the proposed two projects. I can't remember, I can open the email, but it was like 3,400 households and 420 businesses approximately, $34 million. We as a county could choose whether or not we would like to contribute what's called matching funds. And that does not mean we match $30 million. It means any funds you're willing to give towards the program or the sponsors portion. So out of that 34 million, I don't know what percentage BEAD covers, if it's 80 or 90, but Norvado would have to come up with a large portion of that funding. We're saying as a county to contribute $100,000 to that portion of the money. We have under the ARPA funding, under Resolution 2121, there is funding that was not used by Norvado to do the NTIA grant, which was not accepted when they did that for Southern Price County. So we would be using that funding now, reallocating that resolution to this project of $100,000 if the project is accepted and completed. The timeline, when I talked to Chad Young, the president of Norvado, is not in the near horizon. So with the Bug Tussle project, that's in the next 18 months. What this is it would take the middle mile that Bug Tussle was using, or their middle mile, somebody's middle mile, and they would branch off of it in the BEAD funding, using the BEAD funding. So it would be more of like 27, 28, 29, 2028, those years for completion, because they're applying now. They hopefully get awarded it. They start to wait till the middle mile's done, and then they can go off to it's called last mile. They would do the last mile with this project. So that would be us supporting as a county, saying we want Norvado to apply and hopefully get accepted for BEAD coverage in Price County.
Does everybody understand the difference between middle mile and last mile? In my mind, last mile is the connection to the home, basically. Ms. Hodak.
So I would like to request that if this is approved, that any more new funds, as they're called, that the county contributes, that we designate the southeast area, which is Emory, Hackett, Spirit, and Ogma, and that we would recommend that to be highly considered if there's another go-round. I've spoken to this numerous times, that I want to make sure that if it's going to be countywide, that we need to make sure that all counties, all municipalities within the county are covered.
I agree.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any further discussion? Okay. We'll go ahead and vote.
Joe, support of Norvado's BEAD project.
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And Jordan?
Yes.
Carries 10-1 with a no from Supervisor Hastings for Resolution 31-24.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is appointments. Council on Aging Advisory Committee, term to expire 4/30/2027. Nick, you have any comments on that?
Did we decide on? No.
I could comment on that.
Go ahead, Ms. Hodak.
Okay. We had our Council on Aging last week, and yes, we have been struggling to find a northern representative. Many months we have been going through and looking and begging. And so at the last Health and Human Services meeting that we had, Joe Baratka was very interested. He said, I'm from that area. I'm a northern rep. I would like to be able to, if there's no one else that's interested, I would gladly put my name in, not as a county board member, but as a representative from the north. He said it would also be very helpful to me that I could hear what concerns, then I could bring them back to the table. We were elated. We thought that was great. Well, interesting, because we suddenly had someone else, one of the Council on Aging committee members had done her due diligence and found somebody that was interested. So now we had this conundrum, which is to me a great conundrum, that we had somebody from the area and then somebody else from the area. Well, then we finally had our meeting, and Chris Mabey from Health Human Services did contact this person that was her name had been given, and in consultation with her, and she was not really interested. She was just kind of doing the county a favor, but in talking with her husband, she was like, no, I really don't want that. So we were back to having Joe, and at the meeting at the Council on Aging, we did approve that and bringing it forward to you then. We're good with Joe now, unless something's changed since we last saw Joe. Joe?
We need to have a vote to approve the appointment, or is this just for information?
Traditionally, we've just accepted the,
Accept the council?
yeah, make the motion. to
Because we
accept.
accepted them from the council, we just bringing it as FYI, I think.
Ultimately,
right?
what we need is it just needs to be on the minutes. So however, you don't have to approve. This one's one of those you don't have to. Traditionally, we've just kind of, the board said
Blanket
blessings,
approval.
yeah, to all of them.
I think we should approve it before Joe changes his mind. Let's go.
You got immunity, right, Keith?
I move to approve.
Motion by,
It's on your screen.
oh, okay.
Bob's like, cook twice, cook twice.
Motion by Cooper, second by Polachek to approve Joe Baraka for this appointment on the Council on Aging Advisory Committee. Any further discussion? Go ahead and vote.
Joe,
I'm going to abstain because I don't think I should vote on my own appointment, but I am happy to serve. So
Michelle? Yes. And Jordan?
Yes.
Carries 10-1 with one abstention from Supervisor Baratka.
And we thank Joe.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
Actually, the northern area should thank Joe, because now they have a voice on the committee.
Next item, reports. 2023 audited financial report. Mr. Administrator?
That was part of the presentation today. We'll be getting it by the end of the month. The reason it was held up was that single audit. They found, not a bad thing, they found another program that meets the criteria that they have to do the testing, that they didn't do the testing, so it took an extra week to do it. Will not change, well, should not change our audit, but.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. 2023 annual report from the Health and Human Services Department. That's this one now that was in our box, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, this does not need a vote. This is just an FYI. It goes in the file. But it's a very good read for anyone who has any questions what's going on in the Health and Human Services Board. Services, sorry.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, we'll accept this report. Thank you. Moving to Committee of the Whole. Board Chair report. One thing I did was I went to Superior a couple weeks ago, met with Northwest Regional Planning Committee. It was held at Enbridge Oil Refinery in Superior. It was very interesting. My other activities basically were having to do with all these resolutions, and we've discussed pretty much all of it today already. And starting this weekend, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I'll be at the Wisconsin Counties Association Annual Conference. And that's pretty much all I have. Move on to Administrator's Report.
We'll quickly go through the executive summary. It should be your packet with the big logo on it. We're 67% throughout the year. Overall, we've spent 73.74% and we received 76.05% or collected 76.05. So we're positive 231,610. Our biggest hole for revenues right now would be our stumpage. It's behind year over year, but not, like I said, last year we had 500,000 surplus. This year we'll probably be behind by about 200,000. Right now, there was nothing that's been jumping out to us. IT's been, knock on wood, pretty good. Buildings have been good. We haven't had to start doing snow plowing, so that's a positive for buildings and ground and for highway. In general, no major breakdowns, any issues. We'll talk a little bit about high cost placements here in a second. So Health and Human Services, they're at 66% of their budget. They collected 69% of their revenues. The areas, and we'll get to that. Hold on. Other funds, again, nothing jumping out that we've had any issues. Price County cash, we're below last year by 2%. Part of that's we're finishing up projects. We're doing our boiler project. We did. It's not on here, but we just wrote a check for almost $3 million for asphalt for Highway W. So that'll go out, but then we collect the revenues in December when we take out the loan to offset that. In general, we have a healthy balance. We're above 5 years ago, which was kind of our standard. Sales tax, we're a little below last year at this time. We're 1.5% below. We had a slow May, but then June was way up. So we're still in some of our strong months to come, July, August, September. So if we maintain those, we should have no problem. When I say we're 1% behind, it's $9,000. So it's not a big number. Last year, if we even just stayed at this 1% behind, we'd collect 1.4 million, and we budgeted 1.28 million. So we'd still be above budget, which is a good thing. Price County stumpage sales. This is what we were talking about, where we're behind last year's number, but in general, we're at half. We're just over half the year, and we're just at half the budget. So I don't think we'll be way below. We'll be way below last year, but not necessarily budget. We've collected $536,448 in stumpage. Last year, we collected 1.1 million, almost 1.2 million at this time. We budget 1.27 million for the full year. High cost placements. So this is where we made some major adjustments for the 2025 budget. And part of it when we were talking is we used to, in children and youth, we used to classify all children and youth in the children and youth department. But because we have behavioral health now, we've reallocated what would be a behavioral health one in the behavioral health department rather than in children and youth, even though it's a child or youth that would be needing the assistance. So you can see year over year, we're higher. But then if you go back 2 years, we're still 200-some thousand behind budget. And where you'll see that made up is you go over to high cost placements, AODA, which is also behavioral health. They are 90% higher than last year at this time at 340,000, which is up. It's already above budget. We only budgeted 286,000. We're already at 340, but it's because it's all budgeted in children and youth. And so in 2025, if you look at both, we're still under budget for the total. We've adjusted that going forward, so it's in the proper line items. So you add up 913 plus 286, you add up the 241 plus the 377 in expenses. We're not even halfway through the year, so we're doing okay on high cost placements. Health insurance, our fund balance is below, but we have a couple things coming in we found out and we're working through a billing issue where we weren't receiving the proper discounts on when employees were using Marshfield clinics or hospitals. So we negotiate a higher rate of discount, and then we offer a cheaper plan to employees if you choose Marshfield. They were charging where we were getting a discount about 18% through the Marshfield, which is the same we get through the Aspirus line or the statewide line, when we're supposed to be getting closer to 24 to 26% discount. And when you have $1.1 million in claims, a 5% discount is significant. So that supposedly was happening all last year, and part of this year was the improper billing to our fund balance. So hopefully we see a check to offset that, which would put our numbers where we forecasted. We knew we had some big claims at the end of last year, but when we forecasted, we figured we'd be about a positive 200,000 at the end of the year. With this money, that's where we would be. So our numbers were more on than we thought. We just weren't getting the proper reseeding.
How was that discovered?
So this year, when we were working on the employee plans that still need to be approved, we had talked about getting rid of the narrow network, which is the Marshfield Clinic plan, because the Marshfield Clinic has become so narrow around here that we were just going to say one plan for all. It was the broad network. You could go to any doctor, Marshfield, wherever. And we asked if we would still receive the discounts with Marshfield if employees chose Marshfield over the broad network to go to, not to pay for. And they said, no, you're better off keeping the narrow network. That's the incentive, is to drive people to their hospitals. And that's when we discovered that we weren't getting the discount, is when we were working on this year's 2025's plans.
So you'll be looking at that closer going forward?
We don't get that billing. That's just the audit process. But yeah, we'll make sure. We usually get a report saying you had $2 million in billing. You got $1.5 million bill. So that would be 25%. When we got that, we had some big bills that were still coming in. So we couldn't say, oh yeah, they were right or wrong. But through the audit process, we caught that, or it was caught.
Did they accept the responsibility?
That's what we're working on.
So you don't know if you're going to get a credit or.
They're rerunning the bills, is what I was told. The billing. That's the report.
Any other questions for Nick? Okay, we'll accept that report. Move on to the next item. Airport improvement plan.
All right, so you should have received a big page here with all the color. The reason this has come forward is there was some change, and I will let Carl from Becker Hoppy, he can jump in once I kind of set this discussion up. So at Highway and Transportation Committee, it's their role to approve the airport capital improvement projects, and then the executive committee would approve the distribution of the funds. So what was allocated was about $125,000 through our capital improvement projects funds to do 6 T hangars. That would have been the local share. So I don't remember is it 95.5 by the time it comes out? There's a percentage. We would pay, 95.5 by the time it shakes out. So we would have been
correction, Nick, it's 10% local share for Price County and 90% federal funding. And that is for the hangar portion of the project. The taxi lane that would serve the hangar is at only 5% to the county.
Okay, there's a percentage that's a local share. Again, Carl can get into those details when we get there. So we originally, when we approved this several years ago, it had been like 3 years ago, our local share was that 125. It's still that same number. It's just to get to that number, the process is much different than it used to be. It used to be your local share was the 100 or the percentage. So you'd pay your local share, in this case, 100,000. We were done. The way the process is going to work now is the county's on the hook for the full project cost. Revenue starts coming in from the BOA to offset those costs. So in this case, we would be on the hook for about $1 million. There'd be a $600,000 check coming to us throughout the process. So then we'd be out $400,000. We have to then request the additional $300,000 from the BOA, and it affects the way we get funding going forward and the timing of when we can get that money back. So we'd be out $400,000 of our capital improvement fund. And again, I'm throwing out approximations because it could go a little bit, but around 2030 to 2034 would be the years we would get that money back. So we'd be doing a loan to the BOA or to whoever's the project group, a 0% loan until we're able to recover that last 300,000, which is approximately 7-ish years from now. So the reason we're bringing it to the full board is because we're out $1 million. We received 600,000 to offset it, but then we'll have a receivable for $300,000 that we wouldn't receive back into our capital improvement fund for about 7 years. So I'll turn it over to Carl if there's questions or if there's details that you think we should know before discussion.
Okay, Carl, go ahead. If you would, please introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Carl Kemper, president of Becker Hoppy Associates. We're a consulting firm out of Wausau. Been working at the airport for many, many years there since it was basically farm fields. And I've helped the county out with some other projects as well over the years. So appreciate working with you all. I think Nick did a good job of summarizing it. I don't know if I can share my screen here. This may have been handed out or included in your packet.
It is sharing, so you know.
Okay, perfect. So, again, I think Nick summarized it pretty well. It's a $1.5 million project. The county would be responsible ultimately for 10% of the project cost. It's just how soon you can, like Nick said, essentially reimburse yourselves for the portion that isn't available right now in federal funding. So right now there is about 500,000 that's available in FAA funding. So the county would commit to about $1 million in 2025. However, invoicing on that $1 million doesn't occur until 2026, and you get reimbursed about 640,000 in 2026 before any invoicing occurs. So really, by the time the project is under construction and invoicing would start in 2026, about $400,000 is what the county would be invoiced for at some point in 2026. And then, like Nick said, in future years, you would be able to seek reimbursement for the remaining $300,000 in federal funding that this project is eligible for. It's just really going to be prioritization of other projects at the airport that determine when the county would want to seek that federal reimbursement. We suspect that there are other projects that are going to be higher priority at the airport. Like Nick said, into probably the early 2030s, you get those projects wrapped up, and then you seek the remaining $300,000 in reimbursement.
Is there any questions for Carl?
I just have a comment that it's 90-10 for the hangars themselves because the state will not participate because it's a revenue generating project. Typically they're 95-5 where state pays 5, the county pays 5 and feds pay 90.
And that's a good point. So with the completion of this project, there would be revenues that the airport would see. So what a T hangar is, it's a 6-slot or 6-unit T hangar. I think Carl used it. It's kind of like a storage units, but it's six garages that are all connected. They would be rentable, so they're not owned by individuals, owned by us. We would rent them between $200 and $300 a month, or we could have transient ones where they'd pay by the day to put their plane in there if they came in during bad weather or winter or whatever to keep it out of the elements. Worst case, or if low end, 50% good rate, we'd get about $20,000 a year in revenue. If we rented them all for the highest market price, we'd be closer to that $30,000 a year in revenue as a generator. So that is another part of this. This is a rentable storage for your airplane.
Correct.
So-
Here's a picture of one that we helped the Crandon Municipal Airport put up. So it's got, you can see it as 3 hangar doors on one side, and then the other side of the hangar would look the same with another 3 doors. So you can fit 6 aircraft in there.
Michelle, would you like to comment?
Hey, so this is a whole brand new one? Like, we're not refurbishing one or anything? Like, so are all the ones that we have, are those all rented out that we need another one?
I'll
county
address it
doesn't-
a little bit. The county doesn't own any hangars out there right now.
So this is just our hangar, and we need this?
I let Roger
And Carl, you
address
can
that.
kind of comment too if you want. Roger, you want to come up to the.
I could comment, but I'll refrain.
You're not helping.
So there have been requests for hangars, people using hangars. Right now we have 1 site left. If somebody would want to come in and build a hangar, but as far as people coming in and having a place to put their planes when they come to Price County, there's nothing currently for anybody to utilize. We do receive demands. We do receive requests for planes for storage. Even when there was talks about this, there's already some people asking what the process would be to even get in there, how, and so.
So just so I'm straight, so we're looking at an Airbnb for the airport for ourselves to rent out.
Correct.
Two options. One is we could rent it by the month, so it would just be like a storage unit where you pay $200 to $300 a month to keep your plane there. It's your unit. It's what you get to use.
Just a quick correction. I'd like to say it'd be an annual lease, but you pay monthly.
Yeah, so it'd be yes, you would have a year-long lease that you would rent. It would be your slot, your spot. There's also the option that we keep some for ourselves to be able to use transient or have transient planes where it's, I flew in, I had a business meeting, I flew in because I have family here, I flew in to go bird hunting. I want to keep my plane out of the elements. Do you have a rental space by the day that we can put a plane in? So you can do either option with this building.
Will this be required planes only, not other storage allowed?
Correct.
FAA only allows planes. You can have, I guess, additional equipment in the hangar, but there has to be a plane in there.
Primary use must be a plane.
Brian, Joe here. When you get a chance, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, and then Mr. Hastings after that.
Okay. So to either Roger or Carl, a couple questions already answered, but the one that I'm asking here is, do we have a commitment in engineering already for this project that we're committed to already, or we've already spent?
Currently, right now, we do not have a contract, correct, Carl, signed with the state on this.
That's correct.
But is there any engineering costs that we've acquired for this project on the engineering side, or we haven't spent anything yet? Is that correct?
The taxiway leading up to the T hangar, where the T hangar would be.
And I had just a quick comment on that. The taxiway, even if we don't build the hangars, it'd be a good idea to put it in, because then it would bring about the opportunity for more people to build hangars in that area if we don't build them there.
Correct. Either way, it would be utilized at some point in the future.
Mr. Hastings.
I'm confused. So the county owns all the land there and private citizens can't buy it? Is that why there's an issue here?
Correct. It's all
Yeah.
county-owned land, and you're leased by the square foot, whatever the footprint is of your hangar. Plus, I believe it's still 10 feet around the outside of the building.
You maintain 10 feet around. So right now, yes, we own the property. It's like, it's gonna sound, it's like a trailer park. We own the property. You rent a space from us to build your building on it. So you're responsible for your own building. In this case, we're saying because we know there's transient or individuals that don't want to build their own, we can best utilize space by doing this 6 T hanger spot.
Yes. Ms. Stefan.
Number one, do we have like a waiting list for this? And how many would we keep for transient of the 6?
Currently, we didn't. There was an individual that said that had talk about it and put it out on social media, which I just told him not to because it's like we're not at this point yet. So at that point, we had 2 individuals that came forward, and it was a very short period of time that it was on social media. So I mean, this is something that we're not going to announce and say, "Hey, we're building this. Who has interest in it?" You know, it's ultimately, before we even get to that point, I mean, it's the county's decision on whether or not we want to go forward with this. Ultimately, it does help, you know, fuel sales. It's been known that it helps fuel sales at the airport. People that visit the county, anybody else, businesses, whatever, would utilize a T hanger. It is revenue generating, whether or not.
Is there any way we can get, without putting it out, quote unquote, is there any way we can get any kind of feel for the need? You know,
I think
because, you know,
Mike's
to
done
make a informed decision, we really should know a little bit more as far as the, you know, the specific need, I think.
Sure. I mean, I suppose you could
Mr.
send out a
Polachek.
survey to the.
We really don't know what it will bring to Price County. If we don't build it, we know that it won't bring anything. It's a case of if we build it, they will come. That's my feeling on this. Thank you.
Mr. Erickson.
As far as the number 6, is there a reason for that? It's, I guess, could we do less or do we have to do the 6?
I don't know, Carl, if you can answer that. I'm sure, you know, it's like anything, you know, the size, the square footage, what you're going to pay. It's kind of like one of those things when you pay by the square foot. I'm sure the price will come down. Of course, when you get a little bit bigger, the square footage price comes down a little bit as well. But
I guess reason being, if you built half and then it's working well, could you build the other half? Or is it a project that you kind of, because of funding, you have to do it in one shot?
no, I imagine that the taxi lane is kind of designed and built to the 6-bay T hanger, Carl. Can you answer that?
Sure. I'm pulling up a figure here that might help explain it. So this is how these nested T hangers work. They call them T hangers because each bay is shaped like a T, and they get nested together like this to optimize the space. So you can see that when you get out on one of the end T's here, you actually end up with some wasted space that's not needed. So a 6-bay T hanger is a good compromise, kind of like Roger was just suggesting. It's a good compromise for the amount of federal funding that is available to, you know, it kind of allows you to build the maximum amount that you can with that federal funding that's available. And it also gets you some economy of scale in the building and in costs associated with the building. And, you know, you still result in the 4 end bays that you see here. And this one that's shown here is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be a 10-bay T hanger that you're looking at here. With a 6-bay T hanger, you still end up with some of the extra space on each end bay, but the middle bays are very efficient with the space usage. And then I do have a few other points, Mr. Chair, whenever you'd like me to speak to those.
Go ahead. Now's as good a time as any.
Okay, well, I think there's been some good questions from the board here and also from the committee last week. I think a few things to consider. I guess first off, I am a pilot. I own an aircraft. I'm based at the Wausau Airport. I'm 34 years old, so I don't, have a lot of dispensable, capital right now in my life. And without me being able to rent a T hangar from the city of Wausau, I don't know that I would have been able to get into aviation because I don't have the capital to build my own hangar. Building your own hangar is a $200,000 to $300,000 plus endeavor. On the low end, again, about $200,000 to build something kind of just bare bones for yourself. So this really allows people to get into aviation and to hopefully someday build their own hangar at your airport, but it's a starting point. Think of it as kind of the low income housing for people wanting to get into aviation, and the benefits to the county. And it's not always that. It can also be storage for, kind of like has been discussed, people visiting the county, seasonal visitors who have cabins, or seasonal people who want to have a cabin in Price County, but maybe they don't have a hangar available right now. Maybe they'd fly in and purchase a cabin and increase the tax base at the county. So that is a big indirect benefit that we see. When airports do move forward with things like this, that's a great indirect benefit that they see. Another direct benefit that Roger mentioned would be fuel flowage increases. Obviously, the more based aircraft that you have at your airport, or the more seasonal aircraft you have at your airport, the more fuel you're going to sell. And then also touching on the based aircraft, federal funding sometimes is determined, federal funding amounts are determined based on how many based aircraft you have on the field. So if you can increase your based aircraft, you could be increasing your federal funding allocations. And then one other point to touch on, kind of back to the question as to why people can't build their own private hangars. We talked about the availability of personal capital, but another reason that was kind of touched on previously is that all of the property is county owned, and it is a risky endeavor for somebody to build their own hangar on the county owned airport, because the county continues to own the land, and there are required to be clauses in the lease that are called reversionary clauses, where if at the end of the 20 or 30-year lease period, the county wants the hangar, they can take the hangar from the individual. And that can be, dissuading to a lot of people looking to build a private hangar, is knowing that when their lease is up, the county can take ownership over their hangar. So this allows an alternative method for that, where they can lease the hangar from the county.
Nick, go ahead.
We did, so going back to, I think most of this discussion came out of, because of that, it's the interest-free loan is the way I'm kind of throwing it out there, is the $300,000 that have as a receivable for the next 7 to 10 years. I did have Carrie under the capital improvement plan put in what that would look like. So if you look at 2026, well, it comes out in 2025. We put it here, the $431,000 approximately. We have that out for the 6T hangars. And then you can see that our capital improvement fund balance, based on our forecast, it's in your budget packet, based on other projects that we know are coming, it is not negatively affected in the fact of, like, we would have to postpone a boiler project or a parking lot project. So we have through 2028 projects that we're aware of on this list, and you can see we still hover around $1 million in that fund, even with the 431. And then that doesn't include the receiving that money back of the 300. So as far as fiscally under our capital improvement plan, we can handle that loan. We can hold that note. It's more of, do you want to, rather than like this wouldn't put a strain on our future capital projects.
So what are we looking for here today? Board approval to move forward with this T hangar plan.
Correct. So the highway and transportation voted 3-2 to continue with the project and forward it to the groups for the approval of funding, which would be executive and really the full board saying we're okay using the capital improvement funding to hold that 300,000.
When will the construction be?
I believe 2026, correct, Carl? Construction of the, yeah.
Correct. And couple other things to note, these estimates are based on, estimated what we estimate the bids would come in at for the hangar. So could be lower, could be higher. Ultimately, the county would still be eligible for full reimbursement of 90% of the project cost.
Michelle, you have a comment?
Yeah, so just obviously we're nowhere near any of it, but say all 6 of them rented out, is that building add-onable, or did you have to have another spot to do another one? Like, I mean, I know that sounds like the best bang for the buck, but do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think ultimately you'd end up building another building if this one was to fill up. I don't know how easy they would be to attach another one to it, just because of the design of the T hangar building. When you've seen it up on the presentation, it was kind of, the ends are a little bit funky.
Yeah, and I think another, I can bring up our draft site plan here for the taxi lane. So this is the taxi lane that Chair Ernst mentioned that we are working on design of to serve the potential future hangar here or private hangars that could be constructed here. A constraint that you run into at this site down here, this is the large Barry Waymiller hangar down here. And so you run out of room to extend, potentially extend this T hangar in the future. You're essentially using up all the real estate there. Now you could potentially add on to it to the northeast here and have it just facing one way out to the north here, serving, extend this taxi lane and have it future hangars coming out to the taxi lane to the north, but it wouldn't be a T hangar configuration because you run out of room to the south here.
Mr. Kopish.
Yeah, what kind of a operating budget would this have? Is this gonna be a positive, negative? How many places do you have to rent to break even? That kind of stuff.
ROI.
Nick or Carl want to address that if you can?
Carl, you look like you're about to talk.
Sure. Estimated, what I would anticipate the market would be able to demand for rent on these would be $200 to $300 per bay per month. So if you figure $300 per bay per month, you'd be at an income of around $21,000 to $22,000 per year.
But there's got to be some expense to having the
We
building,
did,
right?
right. We discussed the electrical. I think we would put each bay have its own electrical because some like to heat their bay, some don't because it's insulated. So as a renter, you'd also be responsible for electrical. So if we kept one bay, we'd be responsible for that. We're already plowing out there, so there'd be additional time to clean up around it. It's a newer building, so there's less maintenance as in if you have to do siding or roofs, but I guess I don't know.
So does this cash flow so that it really doesn't cost us anything or what?
That's the goal, yeah. So if we were, like he said, to rent it out at $20,000 a year for the whole place, I don't see where it would cost us 20 in any shape or form. It's not additional people. It's less mowing because
It'll pay for itself as long as you're occupied.
Yeah, occupancy is the key. If you can get half full, you should have no problem. If you're full, you're well above.
So half full, you think it would cash flow?
I would think with two to three, yeah, so half.
Do we have that demand here?
According to Mike, we do. From what he hears, especially the big thing at first when you have open ones, you can do transient, and we do have a lot of that where people would pay the $40 a night to put their plane away. So if it's a windy day, if it's a rainy day, if it's a snowy day, they don't have to come early to pre-check, different checking of after like ice or something like that.
Correction, I think 40 is a little light, but okay.
Okay, I don't know what you pay for if you paid $100 for the night. I don't know what a night, we have not set any of those fees, but either way, there is transient that Mike does work with quite a bit that would be at least paying the bills up front.
So do we have to approve this today? I guess I'd like to see some numbers on what we're talking about. Generally, when you go to a project, you do that kind of stuff.
Right.
Gary
Is
just,
there a need to do it today?
Have to approve it today?
Carl's got
I'm
his hand
asking
Oh.
Carl or Nick.
up. Carl's got his hand up.
Okay, Carl, and then Ms. Hodak after Carl.
Thank you. I don't believe there's a need to approve it today. The BOA, Bureau of Aeronautics, would be applying for the grant application to fund this design likely in mid to late October. That's when they are really looking for the go-ahead from you all on this. And then just in terms of what is the demand for this, I think Mike has received a lot of requests for hangars. He brings that up to me a lot, but I guess I'll say that again, as a pilot and user of many of the airports in the region, I'm not aware of any vacant hangar space at any airport right now. As Supervisor Palachek mentioned, this has been historically the type of facility where if you build it, people are going to come and utilize it. One example of that, in addition to any based users or transient users, there are also a lot of owners of warbird aircraft, so historical aircraft that have, that were around in the days of the various wars that we've been in, and they are oftentimes looking for somewhere to store their aircraft, even if it's not where they live, just because of the scarcity of hangar availability really throughout the nation. So it's not, it's not out of the question that you could have somebody from a completely different state who needs hangar space for their warbird, because that's what they like to do and collect is collect warbirds, and could very well be keeping it in this hangar. That actually ended up being the case for one of the hangar bays at the Crandon hangar that we built that I'm showing here. So that's another just kind of neat opportunity, is to have a warbird aircraft at your airport potentially can really raise public interest to see that type of aircraft. And they burn a lot of fuel.
Michelle has her hand up again. Michelle.
Ms. Hodak.
No, I don't. I apparently just didn't take it down. Sorry.
Okay, I have a question. So if it's on county property, then I would assume there's county insurance there, but what about the private part of the hangar with the pilots, the aircraft in there? Where are the insurance lines fall? Are we responsible for, unless it would be shown that something happened because of the county? Or what if the plane catches fire in there and takes the whole thing down?
That would, in my mind, I'm just speaking from my own experience, would be addressed in the lease, that the aircraft owner would be responsible for having a certain amount of liability insurance in case something happens.
Like a renter's insurance,
Correct.
rentals. Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Mr. Kopish, can you clarify? So are you looking for break even on our expense? So like if we have to spend 120, not including the 300 reimbursement, are you looking like, is that an 8-year payback, or are you talking about like every day?
No, not every day. I mean,
I meant
project
like a
life,
yearly.
when we expect it to
Right. So if
cash
we,
out,
yeah. So
what
if
the
we
numbers
were at 30,000, which is
a little sensitivity analysis,
Yeah.
plus or minus.
Okay. We can,
So with that being the case, I'd like to postpone this to the October board meeting, so
Any
we can get
objection?
this kind of information.
Get
I
some
just
more
want to bring up
information and
one
digest
subject,
this.
Mr. Jordan.
Go ahead.
We got out of the rental business when we sold the Red Apple, and now we're looking for a way to get back into the rental business. So I guess we got out of it then because we didn't want to be a tenant, and now we're trying to be tenants to 6 people. So I'm struggling with that as I'm listening to you guys talk back and forth about this whole project. So that's my 2 cents on it. I agree with Mr. Kopish to postpone it, and I'd like to see a lot more information before we do fully vote on it.
Carl?
With regard to the comments there, just wanted to point out that every hangar that you see here on the airport is a renter from the county. They are leasing the property for their hangar to be on. So unfortunately, the way that federal grant assurances are written, the airport is required to retain ownership over the property of the airport, and they cannot sell any piece of the property to an individual. So again, due to those federal grant assurances that the FAA has, the county is really required to be a renter for facilities on the airport.
Ben?
Prentice has an airport. Are all of their hangars full?
Prentice doesn't have any hangars.
No hangars. Okay.
Park Falls has
Park Falls does, and they're all full, and they're looking at building 3 T hangar or a T hangar for 3 aircraft. from What I'm hearing.
4 T hangar.
4?
4, yeah.
Okay. Unless there's any objection, I'd just as soon postpone it to the October meeting also.
Well, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Kopish, go ahead. And we'll just do a voice vote, or do you want to put that on the sheet?
You need
Okay.
a second if we're gonna.
I'll second.
Just, she's doing it
Oh.
on the computer.
Hold on, Michelle. You can still be a second, but.
Well, thanks. I feel left out not being able to push my button.
Oh, Michelle, I'm sure you push people's buttons.
Oh, boy.
We all
Only
do.
about 300 and some of them down here.
Okay, Mr. Kopish, we're ready for you to make a motion.
Michelle's a second.
Michelle will be a second. Any further discussion? The motion is to postpone this until our next board meeting. I don't know, postpone's the right term or table, but
Postpone. Later.
okay. There's no further discussion. We'll go ahead and vote.
Joe, motion to postpone.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Michelle. Jordan?
Yes.
Carries 11-0. Postpone till next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, everybody. It doesn't look like there's anything else airport related on the agenda. Is that right?
I think you're good.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, moving on. 2025 budget, preliminary budget packet.
Does anybody want a break? I mean, I'm about to drone
We
on
can
for a
take-
little while.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break on the administrator's report. Item C, 2025 budget.
You should have received a packet with the 2025 budget that was discussed at the executive committee meeting. We've kind of talked about some little areas of it today. Some of the things, though, the one resolution for equipment has not been included in this because that was after this, but before this meeting. I'll kind of do the 10,000 foot on the first couple pages because we've gone through that already. Like we talked about, our operating levy limit for 2023 is $7,765,994. Our total budget expenses revenue is about 30 million. So what we collect in taxes is not as much as you'd think comparably to what we do as a county. The major changes you see on this first page would be under the adjustments recommended by our office, and then we talked about at the executive, which was wages. We originally put in a 3% wage increase. We did reduce that to a 2% wage increase because of some of the costs that we're seeing come across. So we're recommending a 2% in order to hit our budget, our operating budget. Catkins, we're still in discussion with them over their 2025 contract. They've requested quite an increase. We did put in $54,000 to offset part of their request. They still have requested above and beyond that. So we're still having discussions. Last year it was 46,000. So we've gone up to 100,000. And we'll continue to have that discussion. I believe at the next executive, we'll have to have a closed session to negotiate that contract and work that out with Catkins. Those are probably the two biggest things on the front page that would affect operating. Like I said, the wage increase was reduced, and then Catkins number on there. If you go to the second page, that's our debt service. Today, you guys approved the resolution to do the 105, the 404, the 394, and I believe the 339. So that's all in there. We do have to still look at the resolution for next year's borrowing, and that's that $3 million level. So we are working on getting the plan together of what the request is for projects, and then you would make a resolution that says up to 3 point whatever million, which would then go in the 2026 budget. So we have not finished highways stuff, but we do have debt that we're paying for from this year. You guys also discussed today an increase in equipment, which was a $125,000 loan. So that will be added to this. That'll make the bottom number go up by a quarter. Sorry, not a quarter, a nickel.
Yeah.
In my sense, yeah.
I got a question before we get too far. Is the Catkins contract going to come to the full board, or?
It normally wouldn't.
How come?
Because it's a day-to-day operations that the executive would take care of. So there will be discussions at the executive to come up with it. So the board sets the budget, and then the executive would have to negotiate within that budget is how it works. Any questions before we go on for borrowing? So again, the borrowing, the reason this one's off by about the 124, whatever that resolution was we passed today. So you'll see an increase on the next version of this for that debt for the yellow equipment, the construction equipment. Library services, currently it's in the budget at 70%. Later on the packet, you'll see what the difference is based on if there was an increase. So that's one item we'll have to specifically discuss on what you want to see in the next packet. Bridge and culvert aid, we had additional projects that finished up this year. So that's probably the biggest increase you'll see. We've traditionally been around the $100,000 mark for bridge and culvert aid. This year it's $341,059. And that's based on resolutions that you as a board pass as municipalities come forward with projects. That's another reason our cash balance is a little lower, because we are the bank for most of these until we receive the money back. So we're out that money until municipalities and we collect from the bridge and culvert aid districts. So that's the biggest change fiscally in this chunk was the bridge and culvert aid. So when you go down to the bottom number, we're at 19 cents, which with Catkins in there, we were at, I believe it was 19. We were at 19. We are not Catkins, I'm sorry. The library. When we had the library in there, it was at 19. We removed the library, it went down. But then we had the bridge and culvert aid, and so we're back up to the 19. So the offset there happened. That's why you didn't see a difference going from 100% library down to 70%, is because the bridge and culvert aid was corrected in this packet. The 19 is no longer accurate because we did do that resolution for the capital or construction yellow equipment. So you have to add, it'll be about 24 cents right now, with all other things staying the same. If you go to I guess we'll go through the packet. The next page is just department by department where the funding would be going up and down. Page 4 is net new construction, which we've accepted. Page 5, which is Appendix B. The change there was Friends of Fred Smith was 5,000. Now it's 7,500. Our debt, we had talked about page 7. That's the capital improvement fund. If you look at, this is where I brought it up during the airport. It does have in 2024 or 2025, the airport project 6 unit T hangar at 431,000. We did not put the revenue of 300,000 anywhere because it wouldn't be on our projection until 2031 to receive that 300. But you can see how it affects the fund balance in the green on the right, but it doesn't put us in a spot where we can't continue to do our dam projects or any other projects that may need to be finished.
That airport project, if we said, okay, we would be liable for the invoices as they would come in, and then the reimbursement would be several years out.
No, so we'd be liable in 2026 for $1 million. I'll round numbers, $1 million.
In 2026.
Yep. In 2026, we get a bill for $1 million. We'd receive approximately $600,000 from the BOA that same year. So
That same year, okay.
2026.
All right.
So that equals the 400, in this case, 431, but the 400,000 that we'd be the bank for. In 2031, we would then get $300,000 more from the BOA to bring that 431 down to 125,
2031.
approximately 2031, depending on when we request it.
But isn't
That
it
would-
true if we use entitlements, that money might not come back? Wasn't that the discussion last week?
No. So what Jordan's alluding to is if we continue to do other projects, we could say keep that money to use towards our 10%. That's not what we're recommending, that's not what Carl's recommending. What it does is we're accepting our entitlements in cash. And then for 3 years, we don't have the ability to do projects. So that's where the effect happens. So if we do it in 2025, for 3 years, we're getting 600 back. We can't do projects for 3 years. 29, 30, the years we would do our crosswinds runway. And then in 31, we'd start accepting our money back. So then until 2034, we couldn't do any major projects. So we would still request it in cash. I would not recommend we have the BOA hold it and start offsetting our 10%. That doesn't make sense. So that's where Jordan's question is coming from, is you could potentially have them keep it, but it doesn't serve any good purpose to have them have an interest-free loan forever. So this is the sheet that it shows where it would affect that capital improvement funds. We did talk to dams. We talked to anybody else that would have any potential large projects. There are none coming. So again, we maintain this fund pretty well. Page 8 is your capital projects. I'm getting to the end because that's the important page to discuss. We'll come back to library services, but that's your page 9. Price County apportionment. This is what percentage of the taxes get distributed to each. So out of that, it's $12 million with the debt, or $13 million. You'd multiply it by these numbers to find out what each municipality would be responsible for, which then gets distributed to the taxpayers in that municipality based on that percent. So you have all the paperwork to do, figure out what the taxes are if you'd like to. 2024 equalized value with our debt limit on there, which we discussed with our auditor today. 2025 revenues, we're looking at 30,647,000. Between levy property taxes, that's with our debt and our operational levy, and then all the other areas we receive funding. Expenditures, which department spends the tax money and the state and federal funding. Where does your money go? Price County Price County proposed levy of 2024 on a $100,000 home, you'll pay $48.75 per month, or $585 per year. And then we break it down by public safety would get $14.89 of that. Transportation, which is your project at highway, all those things, that's about $20.27. That includes your plowing. Airport right now is 65 cents. Culture and recreation is 38 cents. So that's UW Extension, the Fair Association payment. Animal controls, 58 cents. Bridge and culvert aid went way up if you compare last year over this year. Debt, squad cars, things like that, that's $2 we pay for. Areas that return on investment, so your building permits, sanitary permits, county forest, parks, dams, anything like that, we actually collect $1.83 per month per 100,000, as in there's a revenue to offset what you would be paying. General government, which is our legal services, buildings and grounds, administrative, so we get money back for that through other ways. Health and Human Services is $8 a month, but that's a nice thing, so you know where your money is going. So on page 16, this is a new page we've added, and this is what I was trying to get towards is if you look at Price County's mill rate since 2018, so the last chunk on that page, in 2018, our mill rate was $6.38 per 100 or per 1,000. In 2019, it went up by 21 cents. In 2020, it decreased by 1 cent, so it maintained the same. In 2021, it increased by 64 cents. So this year we're proposing 24 right now. So that's where we're comparing. 64 cents or 9%. This is when we started doing those large projects at highway. So that's where this increase came from. If you go to 2022, our mill rate was at $7.41 or an increase of 19 cents. Again, more of those highway projects, that's where all that started coming in. In 2023, our mill rate dropped by 97 cents or 13.9. And this is when we started to see home values and the equalized value start to look more like the market around us. And so that's where you start to be more comparable to your counterparts around you. So we were down to, in 2024, we're at $5.64 or a decrease of 80 cents. So over a 2-year period, we went down $1.74-ish, $1.70. So what we're saying is in 2025, right now it says 19 cents. We just did another loan. So about 24 cents. So you're still well below your 2022, 2021 mill rate number. Even though you're starting to go back, you're increasing it. One example I like to give with this mill rate is it's really difficult to compare our mill rate to our surrounding counties. So for example, if my house is worth $200,000 in the town of Elk and my mill rate's $6 here, we'll round. If I pick up that same home, my exact same layout, exact same property, and move it to Chippewa County, it's now equalized value at $600,000. It's not different square foot, nothing. It's just the way their equalized value works. That would make the same mill rate if I lived in Chippewa County, if I had that $600,000 house, which equates to this house here, at $2 because it's 3 times the difference. So it's really difficult. You have to take the average home cost here versus the average home cost in the county you're looking at to see the ratio of your mill rate rather than just, well, Chippewa County has a $2 mill rate and we have a $6 mill rate. We must be overtaxed. They're exactly the same tax amount because of the value of their home, not what we're collecting. They're collecting the same ratio based on the house as we're collecting here. So mill rate's dangerous to compare county to county, but you compare it amongst yourself as in internally to say, where is it going? Is your county having a higher equalized value? What are you offsetting long term? So we included this new chart to show that as a board, the mill rate continues to go down or has been going down for big chunks over the last couple of years. And that includes new projects like the $3 million of borrowing, the $1 million of borrowing back in the first project tranche of the highway. So when we go back up to what do you want to do with certain areas in the budget, not saying increase anything, but just understand that goes up and down a lot based on your equalized value and then historical values. Any questions about the budget before we specifically get direction on areas? So the,
Go ahead.
okay, so the areas that we would like some guidance to update the document and bring it forward to executive are really the library services, which is page 9 in the packet. It is in the budget at 70. There was a discussion to go to 80 at executive. That did not get put in here. We kept it at 70. We did put on the bottom the 80, 90, and 100, what that levy impact would be. So 1 cent if you go up to the 80%. If you go to the 90%, it'd be 3 cents. If you go to 100%, it's 4 cents on that mill rate amount. So we're looking for guidance on how do you want this document be prepared for the budget going forward.
Patty.
And to the previous question just now, the wage increase was dropped to 2%. What's the difference between 2% and 3%? What is that 1% dollar?
About between around 80,000 in operational, maybe closer to 100 now that we've had a little bit more increase. So we have offsets. So like, for example, if we give a 1% and you look at a department like what's it downstairs? Child support. Child support has federal or state funding at 66%. So if you go up $1, the state picks up 66% of that money. If you look over at health and human services, several of those departments get picked up under their state or federal funding. Evan Lund's money gets picked up under a state grant. Highway, state projects pick up a lot of the increase across the board. So again, we originally recommended 3%. Our operating levy doesn't support 3%, but that does not affect bridge and culvert aid, debt, or a library. It wouldn't change anything if we changed the wages there.
So the discussion right now would be library. Do we want to leave it at 70 or do we want to make an increase for his budget worksheet?
Mr. Chair, I had that communication that.
Yes, that's correct. Please go ahead.
This came from Mr. Bruce Marshall, who chairs the committee, correct? He's the chair of the library board, and he was unable to be here, so he did send this on to both Deb and to Becky, and asking that I would read that. So he said, regarding the presentation tomorrow, I think that the strongest argument is definitely, quote, "There's no logical reason for the county not to pay the full cost of out-of-municipality circulations for county residents. Those county residents obviously use the municipal libraries just like the municipality residents. The costs are the same for all of them, so why should the reimbursement vary?" Unquote.
Thank you.
There's also one other clarification I do want to make. Not all residents pay this. So if you live in the town of, or the city of Park Falls, the city of Phillips, or the municipality of Ogama, because you have the library, you're already paying through your municipal tax. So Park Falls has a tax, Phillips has a tax, Ogama has a tax. So whatever you put on here goes to the other municipalities because they don't have a library. So all this gets redistributed to like not those three, the remaining municipalities, because they don't have their own, so it's their portion.
Mr. Palchik.
What other municipalities are there in the county that have their own libraries?
It would just be those three: Park Falls, Phillips, and Ogama. So town of Fifield, town of Elk, town of Lake, all of them would be subject to this portion.
Okay.
Because they don't have a library that their municipality is paying for, so we collect it for them.
And
go ahead.
And as I had said in another meeting, when I see what we're doing with the budget, and that I see Fred's friend Smith is asking for additional. The airport, we're asking for additional. Of course, the highway. These are all things that are improving our community all the way around and for our community people and providing these services. And I just think this is one way, a good sign of good faith that we believe in the library. It's not, and as Deb had said when she presented this morning, this isn't just about books, folks. This is about the community gathering spaces, the activities that are going on in these places. They're just, dining site is held in the Ogama building. There are just so many things that provide for our communities that can't get up here. Some of our shut-ins, you know, unfortunately, we had to do away with books by mail, but there are still people that are helping with that situation. Somebody will say, will you look for this or whatever. So it just boggles my mind that we can't help. We can't provide that as well when it's been 70% for as long as I've been around here. So just that being said, I'll get off my soapbox.
Any further discussion? Mr. Kopish?
Yeah, Deb made a reference to the 70%, and we had been doing 100% until the mid-2000s.
Okay.
And we're dealing with levy issues. We decided to drop it to 70 to the state requirement. So it had been 100% years and years and years ago. And again, that had to do with levy. And I have a conflict. I'm on the library board, and I want to be on the library board, and I appreciate it. My wife and I both appreciate the library. But what I see is this actually doing is, so you go to 100%, and boy, the library is going to get more money, right? I don't know if that's how it plays out, because right now they've got a budget, and we give them money, and the municipality kicks in the rest, unless there's some other revenue streams. And I see over time the migration to where we give them more money and the municipality cuts back. So the library doesn't end up with any more money in the long haul, because we're all dealing with these levy issues. We all want to try to keep our taxpayers, you know, whole, so to speak. That's something that concerns me. I'm on the library board, but I represent Eisenstein and the town of Lake. So do I want them to pay more money so the city of Park Falls can reduce? I don't know. That's a dilemma I have, just to put it all out there. It sounds good, but does the library actually benefit, or does the money stay the same? It's just a matter of whose pocket it comes out of. I don't know. And there must be a reason why the state did it at 70%. And I don't know what that is.
Just wondering if we could ask one of the librarians about that question that he's posed.
Rebecca, would you like to?
It's on or off?
If the green light's on, it's on.
Push it. There you go.
Okay. So I had been at a 0% at the city since I started working here. So I've been here for 16 years. The county funding has never impacted what the city gave me. So before Walker, there was a maintenance of effort. So the city had to give us the average of the last 3 years, but the city has never actually asked me what the county gave me. We had a decrease this year in the county funding, and I did actually go to the city, and I managed to get a 3% increase this year from the city to help cover the county downfall. And then they did actually give me a one-time payment to cover the rest. So, I mean, I understand your concern. To be honest, I've never thought about it. The city's never asked me what the county's given me. It's always been, you know, the formula, whatever you guys decide to give us from the formula. I don't see the city of Phillips actually giving me a decrease. I have to fight tooth and nail for an increase from the city, but I think that's the norm these days. If you want more money, you have to fight for
And a
it.
question, what percentage of your budget comes from the county and what percentage comes from the city? And what, are you getting other funds that supplement your budget?
No, so that unless we write a grant
Okay.
for a specific project, that's all the money we get. We get money from the city and we get money from you. I get, traditionally, it's almost been 50-50. However, the county accounts for 2/3 of my circulation. So the county is using my library, 2/3 of my library services, and they're paying for half. And then the city's using the other third and they're paying for 50%. It's a little lower than that now because, you know, the formula got messed up during COVID, to be honest. And so now that's why the county funds are a little bit lower. So now you guys are giving me, I think I got 143 from the county this year and the city gave me 180. So right now the city's actually giving me more and they are accounting for a third of my circulation.
Okay.
And that's a good point too with the amount. It also statutorily changes the number of individuals that sit on the board. So at 70%, I'd have to go look at the numbers based on what each municipality gives. But, you know, for example, we had this discussion earlier in the year. It used to be 2 individuals that sat on the Phillips board. Based on the funding, it's up to 4, which now we do the 4 based on the new plan. There could be more individuals that sit on it. I believe if you go up to a higher, the percentage is going to also affect the number of individuals that sit on Park Falls, Phillips, and Ogama. I don't have that.
Yeah, if the county were to give me more than what the city gives me, you get another seat on my board, is where it sits at Phillips right now. And I can't speak to the other 2, but I mean, obviously I'm paying attention to that so that I can tell you guys whether or not you get another seat. At 100%, yes, you definitely get another person. I don't know where the actual threshold is.
Do you do your budget
Yes,
and you have to have the city approve it?
yes.
Okay. Does your board get involved in the budget?
Yes. So the city tells me how much money they want to give me. And that is the only input that the city has outside of the fact that the city has 3 appointees on my board. My board is the body that actually says, you have to spend this much on books. This is how much we're giving you in raises. This is what we're going to spend on programming. So like line by line, I present it like Nick does. And then the board and I sit around like you guys are today. And using the amount of money that we're getting from the city and the county, the board decides how to spend it.
Okay, so the city says, we're going to give you this much money, and then you know what you're going to get from the county based on the percentage, you know, from our budget.
Right.
And then that's your total budget amount that you've got to work with.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Deb, could you answer the same questions for Park Falls on the budget?
So before Deb comes up, I just want to make note that Phillips lost a very good librarian, Jake Wyrzakowski. The salary was nowhere near where he could live, so he moved on to, I don't know, Chippewa or something.
He went to New Richmond.
New Richmond.
He's doing the same job in New Richmond.
Yeah, so just making those kinds of,
That goes on all over the place.
I know, but
I'd
when,
just like to make one comment. The
Yeah.
county didn't lower the amount, the check was smaller, but we didn't lower our percentage. It
No.
stayed the same. It's based on usage, just to
Correct.
clarify.
It went from 150 to 143 based on the 70%. So
Yeah.
there's a reduction in.
So, but it wasn't a county decision. It was just the way the numbers.
That's 70%.
Okay, Deb, so the same questions regarding how you come up with your budget.
Okay. City gives me a certain amount of money to spend.
Okay.
I look at my line items from last year and work with those same ones, bring it to my board. We discuss it, we talk about it, we decide if there's any changes, we give it back to the city.
Did you do that with your board already?
No, we do that in
Oh,
October.
okay, because I missed it if you did.
No. At the last meeting, Mr. Kopish, I said that I would be sending you out the initial one.
Okay.
So no,
this'll
we
happen
haven't done
next
yet.
month.
I
I
promise.
will be there. But
Good.
again, the city says, this is how much we're going to give you. You take
Yes.
your county money and then you have to fit within the parameters of that.
Exactly.
So if you get more money from the county, technically, a higher percentage, it may not always work out that way, but you should get more money. Like this year, the percentage stayed the same and the money went down because of circulation. So you really don't know where that's going to go.
Right.
But you've got to work within that budget.
Right.
Do you have any negotiation with the city on how much they give you?
Yes, a little, somewhat. My initial budget is due Thursday
Okay.
for them to look over. And then I sit down with, we have a new administrator now, so I sit down with him and the mayor and the treasurer for the city, and we take a look at things. In the past, our suggestions have gone well.
Yep.
But I don't always get my way.
Yep.
Or the board's way. But it's a useful discussion. Last year I had my budget ready to go, and then everything was good. We had agreed, but then there was another position that came up in the city, and all of a sudden $6,000 was gone. So this year, my work is to try and build that 6,000 back in and work from there.
Yeah.
So
And then you
sometimes
got a-
there's surprises.
And then you got a reduction from the county
Yes.
with the 70%.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking forward to next month's meeting.
Me too.
We do have Amy here from Ogama,
Okay.
but if you had those same
If
questions.
if you feel like you want to contribute, that'd be fine. Why don't you? Then we know how everybody's working, right? I don't know Amy. I know the prior
Introduce
director,
yourself.
but how long have you been there? A couple of years?
No, actually. So I'm Amy Abel. I have not met most of you. I am
Closer.
from Ogama, and I was hired at the end of June.
Oh, okay.
This
So
year.
really new.
So I am very new. I do not have any of our numbers handy. This is my first budget cycle going through as the director of the library. I can tell you that our only funding is from the town of Ogama and from the county. So we function the same way that Becky and Deb do for creating our budgets. I've been working with our board president to draft our budget. We'll be meeting later this afternoon, and we will be presenting our budget with a request for an increase to the town of Ogama in their October meeting.
Okay. All right. Still the same chair there in Ogama?
Yes, Lars Holm is still our chair.
Yeah, okay.
So we've not received an increase from the town in many years, and in fact, several years ago had a significant decrease. So same funding issues that everybody is facing.
I agree. And that's kind of why I made the comments I made before. So, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Mr. Erickson.
I actually have a question for all three of them. Do you receive private donations, and do we have CD funds in library accounts?
Falls Public Library does have a gift account. We do receive some private donations.
So we do too. I think all of us every once in a while receive a private donation.
So you do have an account set aside that has.
Every library board holds on to library funds. So in addition to what you have, historically, I've never used those funds under my operating budget.
Okay.
So that's what we use when we needed a new roof. That's what we used when I need a new air conditioner. That's what I use when I have to the HVAC guys in, because I don't have a capital
Improvement.
I don't have a capital improvement fund.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Thank you for
Questions?
letting them speak. I appreciate that.
Sure.
They do too.
Chairman
Mr.
Ernst.
Go ahead.
Joe, here, you get a chance.
Go ahead.
Okay, a couple questions. First, I guess, the one for Nick. In your handout here, you show out-of-county libraries showing revenues, and then you have Price County libraries. Can you explain how that all relates?
Yeah, so it's a good observation. So there's two separate library groups that we get reimbursement and distribute for. So the out of county ones in the plan says we do 70%. There's no negotiation on that group. It's individuals. You might live in Westboro and go up to the Ogama library, it would actually be the opposite. You live in Price County and you go to one of these other libraries. So there's a circulation at these other libraries, and they can request funding from that. So I would guess like Park Falls, you would send it to Ashland, you would send it to Sawyer County, Lincoln, and do the same thing. So that top out of county libraries in our library plan, it says 70%. That's the minimum. That's what we say for that. The Price County Library in county is anywhere between 70 and 100. So it's based on what the board looks at the request. So traditionally they've requested a number, we put it in the budget, and then it's accepted or changed. The last several years, the request was 70%, so there was no discussion because that's the minimum, unless I suppose somebody could have said, I want it to be 80, even though they only requested 70. So this year they requested 100, and then that's what spurred the conversation more than we've had in the past. So there are two separate funding groups, out of county and in county.
And just to clarify, they requested 100 because they were told to shoot for the moon. So, and I didn't tell them to do that, but.
Well, they were told that they have the option to
Right.
request anywhere between 70 and 100. They requested 100.
So they did, you know.
Another question then, and maybe it's somewhere that I haven't received it or haven't seen it, but do we have the ability to review their draft budget, seeing how we're being asked to contribute more to it?
They're working on their city budgets. I don't know. We traditionally haven't received anything, but we could ask the city. I mean, it'd be a public record of what's your budget for these libraries.
Well, me personally, if we're going to be giving more than the minimum required by state statute, then I would like to see what their budget is and what their expenses and revenues are as far as what their programming is and things like that, if that's possible.
Yeah, and clarifying, we're not giving them more. We're collecting taxes to the municipalities. So it's not out of county funding. It's what levy number do you want to collect from other municipalities? It's not a charitable donation or like we would for Friends of Fred Smith. That's a
right
clarification. Yeah.
Right, but we're increasing the tax liability of the citizens by the decisions.
Correct. Yes, but we're not. Yeah, it's not. We're setting the levy for that.
Yep. When we're making a tax liability decision, I would like to see some information about their budget. Me personally, that's just my thoughts.
I'm sorry. I think that's a great idea, Joe. When we were funding the fair, for instance, we required them to report to us and give a report. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So what's your pleasure? Do you want, go ahead.
So I guess this is Joe again. I would make a motion that we postpone this till the October meeting and request that we add more information from the three libraries in the county.
And not that you can't do that, but there's no, really, we're just having a discussion to say, what do you want to put in? So it's not a postpone. We're not deciding on a percentage today. We're saying, what do you want to see in the paperwork for the final budget? Semantics there. We're not choosing a number.
So the budget that you presented us has it at 70.
Correct. If you want to see it at a different rate, we can do that for the presentation of the budget that would go to the newspaper.
We already, based on page 9 here, you're already telling us the consequences of the.
You've got that in there.
It's not figured in your budget worksheet.
Correct.
But the assessment per.
Yep. The 80.
1,000 is 80 is 1.
Yep.
90 is 3 and 100 is 4 cents.
Right.
So we've basically got that. You just want to know how to present it.
Correct. So there's no, you're not making a decision today.
Right.
We're just, when we get to the final presentation, what number do you want to see in there? So postponing, there was no decision to be had today.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we could just tell you we're going to.
True. You could make the final, now we're saying to postpone.
Yeah, because this was decided that in the executive meeting and it already got turned down. There was no second. I mean, how many times can you bring this forth?
I don't know. It wasn't decided. It was said to bring forward at 70%. There's
Well,
been
the
no
motion failed.
The decision is made when you approve the final budget. So it's not, we don't individually decide things in the budget. It's a full package. So I'm looking for recommendations of what the full package would be. There's only like statutorily net new construction, you have to have a motion on. Your debt, the only reason we do individual decisions is because there's resolutions based on it. But as a budget, it's kind of the whole package.
I believe.
Yeah.
Well, I vote to turn this down, and facts are facts, and the 2023 numbers are down, the circulation numbers are down in Phillips, so I don't think there's any reason to give them any extra money.
Ms. Hodak?
Well, not to get political here, but I just want to remind people that the Phillips Library had some issues that scared people away, if you want to just put it like that. So I'm just going to say that that can irk me a little bit. But I did want to say that at the executive meeting, I believe it was Mr. Barkstrom who proposed the 80%. And yes, it didn't call thing because people needed some more information. So go with that maybe, Alan, and see what that works out to
That
be.
failed motion was not to actually raise it to
No.
80%. All it was is to change the way it was presented in this budget worksheet from 70 to 80. It didn't actually give them the 80 yet. That won't happen. If we would change that, that would happen at the budget approval process.
Correct.
Final presentation. And just to, we should go back. There has been a motion on the floor. So to postpone the decision when, Joe, I would say, what you're actually asking for is a motion to seek additional information, like have me or Carrie ask the cities, municipalities for more information.
Mr. Chair,
Exactly.
Are you recognizing his motion?
We had one before. That was
I
Joe.
didn't really.
Then we should have had a second
Right,
before
that's
we
why
had
I'm
any
going
more
back.
discussion.
I tried to second Joe's motion.
There
I
you go.
just,
Okay, all right.
I'm way over here and I know you can't hear me very well.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Well,
we
I
hear
know, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, but on top of that, I've had my hand up for a hot minute, but I guess what does the 70% come off of? Is it like transactions? Is it like number of books checked out? Is it like how do they come to the 70% to begin with? Sorry, I mean, somebody probably knows this. I just don't.
There's a formula. So there's a state formula based on circulation and then the cost per circulation. So it's not a set amount. It's not like, cool, we spent $100,000, you take 70% of that. It's the number of circulation outside of the city limits or the municipal limits. And in order to get the number, you multiply that by it's a amount per circulation based on cost spent. So if the city would spend more, the number would actually be higher because there would be more money per circulation. So every time the municipal spends less or we spend less, that even if you have more circulation, the number actually goes down that you're multiplying it against because it's like our shared revenue or our GTA. The more we spend, the more we get back from the state. The statutory number, if that helps.
So we're going to act on the motion?
If we're done discussing it, is there any further discussion
Can I ask what the motion is?
to postpone making a decision till our next meeting?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. Does that sound right, Joe?
Yes, that's correct. And just another comment on that. So like Nick was saying, we're not deciding on anything here, but when you start putting that into the draft budget and where we're going to go with things, it makes it harder to take things out. And I'm not saying I'm not in for funding more to the libraries. What I'm saying is I believe I need more information before we create that additional tax burden on the taxpayers to do that. I'm just asking for more information. I don't think waiting till our next meeting is unreasonable to get that information. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
So
Okay.
will it be a resolution then, or, because we can't just keep saying we'll talk about it at the next meeting? I mean, you can't.
Right. So the way it'll work is eventually we'll pick a number to put in the budget and you accept the budget as a whole. So we'll put a levy in the newspaper saying we're collecting 300,000 of library, whatever the percentage is, and that's when the back and forth stops.
So the percentage will be based.
I understand.
That we put in the budget will
I think
be
it's fair.
presented or put in the budget. I guess we'll discuss it at the next meeting and decide what that percentage to the budget in the budget should be. Then when we get to approving the budget, hopefully it'll go through then.
Right. At October, we have to have a final levy number to go to public hearing. So at the October meeting, you have to pick a percentage. You have to pick a net new construction. You have to pick a debt levy. Everything has to be decided at the October meeting. That's why it helps when we can prepare the presentation so you know what the number is. We can adjust on the fly. That's not an issue. But we try to present the whole so that you can see what the levy is going to be to forward a levy number to the public hearing.
Mr. Barkstrom.
That discussion was all held at executive. Is that where we're gonna hold it again, or we're gonna wait till the next full board meeting?
It'll be a board decision. What's going to happen is that executive will bring back the packet saying, here's what we heard at the board meeting. Is everybody on board of what we talked about? That's how we got down to 2% based
But
on
we'll
conversation.
discuss it at executive.
Yeah, I would say it's not going to be the in-depth discussion. Now, you guys could say, prepare for the board meeting X number, and we can do that so that we have general levy, but ultimately the board has to make the final levy decision.
Any further discussion? Okay, we've got the motion and seconded, Bratka Drobnik, and it's on your screen. Go ahead and vote.
Joe, motion to postpone?
Yes.
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 That was Jordan. Alan, is your machine off? What is your vote? And Doug? Apparently some machines have run out. Passes 11-0.
Okay, we'll move on. Any more discussion on these sub items here, Nick?
We talked about bridge and culvert aid, like I said, more projects finished. So the bridge and culvert aid is the one levy item that spikes and goes down, because we don't know what municipality is going to request a bridge and culvert aid and when they're going to be finished. We can have a general idea. You as a board, we did discuss, I can't remember if it was highway or executive. One of the two we discussed where we could put a cap on it and say, we will not approve more than X amount of projects each year. And we just don't have a cap number. You could just say, here's what it's going to be. So that does spike up and down. Debt levy we talked about, we added to it today. Community contributions, there was no discussion. We did at executive talk about the UW Extension grant community development individual. There was nowhere in the budget that was placed, just due to we're already at our levy limit. So that discussion was quick. And then we discussed SEP for a little bit, but we didn't have any major discussion there as contribution year over year. Economic development was the other area we discussed. And we just, again, our operating levy is at its max for the year based on what the decisions were made. So we talked about it, but it was not requested to be added at the executive level to be presented. So those were the other areas of discussion. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Moving along, committee chair reports. Administrative. Is there anybody here from administration that can give us a report? Chair's absent? I don't know. Okay,
I'm vice chair, but I did not get any direction on that. So I'm sorry, I don't have any information on that.
problem.
I could have brought up the minutes, but everybody just read the minutes on an administration.
Yeah.
Are
Since
you?
last board meeting? No, I asked if there was a meeting.
Yeah, there was some work on,
Yeah, what the
I
heck?
don't know.
That's health insurance
Yep.
and where we wanted to go. Oh yeah, the better help, the health insurance, vision, dental.
The
Yeah.
EAP, the
Which we
Employment Assistance
have-
Program,
Yeah.
the HSA.
With
Yeah,
that one.
HSA, we're going to
Sorry, I'm
West
with that
Bank
one.
up in Park Falls, Associated Bank from Forward for
That's
our
right.
HSA.
Okay.
But we'll have admin coming up to set the health insurance premiums.
okay, thank you for your collaborative effort. Moving on to executive, okay, I report one of the last meetings we had a discussion for the Rail Transit Commission. We're going to still participate in that. Mr. Barkstrom is going to be our rep. And basically just so we stay on top of things informatively. We had our treasurer and administrator reports, which we exhausted the budget pretty much today. We don't need to go into that anymore. There were 2 resolutions forwarded that were part of today's agenda. Catkins, we brought that up. That's still ongoing negotiations. We had an update on bug tussle. And then we went into closed session and to talk about the required annual review for the administrator. Any questions? Forestry and Parks, Buildings and Grounds. Is there any report for that?
Jeff's not here, but the big thing we discussed there was we have a tax deed property that would link some of our forest property together. I can't remember, it was 120, 134 acres for some reason sticks out, 134. So we're exploring options. The committee wanted us to continue looking at if we would be interested in purchasing that land to make a better block access for county forest land. It'd be like about $200,000. The previous owner would get the proceeds from that sale. But we have to decide, do we have to go to auction or do we have first right of refusal at market price? So something to discuss further at forestry. Buildings and Grounds, we talked about finishing the parking lots, and that should be all done and good to go. Highway is a big help on getting those done. American Asphalt laid the asphalt for those projects. They are finishing up the boiler projects up over at the normal building. We got 2 new boilers going in to replace 45-year-old boilers. So they're much smaller. They should be much more efficient. That's all I got.
Okay, moving on. Health and Human Services. Ms. Hodak.
Yes, September 4th, we met. We had subcommittee appointments. Again, we talked about the Northern representative, so that's old news. Joe is in there for us. Public Health, Community Needs Assessment, state requirement, and we were just given the results of that from the stakeholders meeting. Let's see, COVID booster update. The Moderna vaccine will be available mid-September, can be administered along with the influenza vaccine. I see at Pick and Save, they have a sign up that you can sign up for those as well. Aging and Disability Senior Services, Cheyenne Litvinoff and I were there both online, and she gave a really good report of what was going on. Let me see, Transportation Coordinating Committee report. Reported BART activity. Was there anything else that you would have come with that? Okay. That was Patty. No. Request of 12,000 from both cities, increased use during July. ADRC Governing Board meeting. Cheyenne reported on what was happening there. Survey coming out for consumers who have gone through counseling. They're going to work with that. There was an issue of no quorum. We couldn't make any decisions at the time because there was no quorum. I was not happy to see that they didn't have our Phillips representative, and that's Kathy Shimkitz on there. They had it that she was vacant, and I said, we already approved her to be on there. So she wasn't even contacted about there being a meeting. I was also very concerned that we still don't have any tribal representation on that board. And I'm concerned about that because we're not getting their input. So my questions to the director was what's being done about that? Who's handling that? Are we really working at getting representation from the tribes? So I'm hoping that something is going to come of that. Woodland Enhanced Health Services Committee, I was online with that, as was Pat, as was Cheyenne. Setting rates for 2025, that's in Owen, where we have, where our mental health, our severe cases go. And so the rate increased from 200 to 300 for a full day. A half day will be 150. Private room rates are also increasing. Let me see, economic support, the WEAP, Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program policy, state federal grant program for households that are losing their energy source. No changes in the guidelines presented from last year. Let me see, we approved the proactive crisis application policy as presented. Fiscal administrative, high cost placement reports have been going up and it is projected to continue. So for reference, billing is about a month and a half, 2 months behind, and that's usually the norm. Sarah Reese reported there was a state triannual visit, covered organizational updates. Funding is being used well to help with home placements, reviewed key performance indicators, screening for the intakes, reporting, and casework contacts were all being done in a timely manner. Still recruiting for social workers for children and youth, and the behavioral health unit had 1 interview for offer pending. I would assume that happened. I haven't heard since then. Our next meeting is October 9th at 9 o'clock. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Highway and Transportation, Mr. Palchek.
The highway crew completed shouldering on County Trunk Highway W and is marked for striping. They have chip sealed 30 lane miles on County Trunk Highway F, W, I, O, and C with assistance from Lincoln and Taylor County. They replaced signs for the County Highway D project. Removal of stumps and rocks on County Trunk Highway RR and culvert changes on County Trunk C continue. The crew will be changing 3 large culverts and doing a 3-foot road lift for the U.S. Forest Service, which should take about 3 days. They also boom mowed County Trunk O and shouldered 1 mile on Skinner Creek Road for the town of Elk. Shop has begun installing plow mounts in preparation for winter maintenance. Due to last year's mild winter blade order is not needed this year. RFPs are due September 30th for purchase of plow and body package and installations. These will be mounted on the 2 Freightliner chassis we ordered from Boyer Truck. Airport has begun working on removing trees and brush that are growing tight to the fence. They have also been working on filling in holes in and by the fence that animals are using to get into airport property. They have also been busy mowing and fixing gates. Dams, all dams are in good condition and all mowing and brushing has been completed. Looking ahead, Dams is planning on putting out a PSA for winter drawdown on all flowages beginning October 14th to be completed by October 19th. The Weimer's lightning strike has been fixed and back to normal working conditions. Along with our normal winter drawdown on Sioux Lake for Weimer's Dam, we must do a temporary, more extensive drawdown to install a new large culvert on Island Road. This drawdown will take place over approximately 1 week. After reaching the lake level needed to replace the culvert, the work will take place for a day or 2. After the installation, the lake level will be restored, but only to the normal winter pool. Our mandatory DNR inspection for Prentice Dam will take place September 26th. Our next meeting, Monday, October 21st, will be a fall road tour, 7 a.m. at the highway shop. The full board is invited. You need to call or text the highway office to attend, so we know how big of a vehicle to get so everybody can all ride in one vehicle. And any board member that is not a member of the highway committee may charge mileage and per diem for that day. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palchek. Land use and UW Extension, Mr. Barkstrom.
Okay, we held our meeting on August 29. We had a conditional use permit filed. We had a public hearing on it. It was in the town of Fifield, and it was approved with some conditions. There was 1 special exceptions permit in the town of Elk for a garage issued center line to the road that was also approved. There was 1 land division in the town of Lake, and that was approved. And we went over some information on short-term rentals and what was being done in other counties. Further discussion will be had on that. Land conservation, there will be let's see, there will be a clean sweep on September 24th in the city of Park Falls. And if anybody wants to know more of that, could talk to Evan. We also talked about the inspection of a certified farm in the town of Worcester. Let's see, that will be the end of land conservation. This UW extension. Art Lurch has announced his retirement, and that will be later on this year, and they're discussing replacement for him. There is scheduled a reality fair that was discontinued because of COVID, so that will be reestablished this spring, and the school is working on that. Rachel. That's all I have. Is there any questions? Okay.
Thank you. And finally, law enforcement, Mr. Palachuk.
We haven't had a meeting since our last meeting. We had a meeting scheduled for the 26th of September, but the sheriff and the chief deputy are going to be out of town. I attended the picnic for the fundraiser for the 2 dogs. It seemed to be well attended. It was a very nice day. Do you have anything, Nick? Our next meeting will be the 16th of October.
Yeah, everybody was gone for that next meeting, so that's why we moved it on. I don't remember the numbers for the K9 picnic, but it was well attended by public, and we do it as for the employees, so it went very well.
Go ahead, Patty.
October 16, is that at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m.? Okay, thanks.
I'll get an update about meetings out.
Any other questions for law enforcement? Okay, thank you, Larry. We'll convene out of committee of the whole, and now go into closed session. Announcement and motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to the exemption in Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed sessions for the purpose of, in this case, county administrator performance review.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Hodek, second by Barkstrom. All in
Mr.
favor?
Chair, Mr.
I'm
Chair.
sorry. Go ahead.
This is Joe.
Yeah.
Seeing how I can't participate in that being online and it's the last item and I can't act on anything done in there, I request leave the meeting at this time.
Permission granted.
Okay,
I
thank
follow
you.
Joe's suit. Can I have permission?
Yes. Yes, you may.
All 3 of us.
Okay. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
I have another appointment I have to get to, and I have to pick up my wife, so I cannot stay any longer.
Okay.
So I ask to be excused also.
You're here.
Okay with me. Okay, so we are going to end the meeting online just because we won't come back. So
Yep.
It's not that we're adjourned. We're going into closed session. It was approved. So thank you for those who've joined us online.